Good morning and welcome to Growing a Future Regional Workforce for the Inland Empire Summit. I'd like to thank Riverside Community College District Chancellor Wodiab Isak, Interim Executive Director of Economic Development and Entrepreneurship at Riverside Community College District, Dr. Deborah Mustaine, and the Workforce and Economic Development and Entrepreneurship team for putting on this wonderful event. Innovation has long driven advances in productivity, economic growth, and social change. Innovation has the power to affect a region's economic growth and contributes to aiding workers that face difficult and dangerous tasks through automation. Entrepreneurs transform an idea into a product that is of practical use and tailor an existing technology to the needs of a new market or community. The work that you all do is important for the future of the Inland Empire's workforce. We must continue to diversify the economy by creating quality jobs and encourage present and future students to come up with innovative ideas that will tackle today's global challenges, from climate and social change to unemployment and poverty. Recently, Congress brought back community-based funding to improve our neighborhoods and bring the best opportunities to our residents. This action allows each representative to request funding for 10 to 15 projects through appropriation subcommittees. Riverside Community College District immediately reached out to my office in search of funding that would aid in establishing the Inland Empire Technical Trade Center. With the help of my office and the collaboration of the Riverside Community College District, they were able to secure a total of $5 million over the next 2 years for technical training, entrepreneurship programs, and support for a facility in the city of Jurupa Valley to advance the academic goals of our current and future students. IETTC will not only aid in the creation of a highly skilled, diverse, and competitive workforce, but it will allow students to earn as they learn, allowing our region's most underserved and marginalized residents a chance to go from poverty to prosperity. Thank you, Riverside Community College District, for the amazing work that you do.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, we can do just a little bit better than that. Good morning. Okay, that's what I like to hear. And what a refreshing way to start the morning with words from Representative Mark Takano. My name is Michael Wiafe. I'm the Government Community Relations Fellow at the Inland Empire Community Foundation, and I'll be your MC for the day. Very excited to be so. Before continuing the program, I want to go over just a few logistics. Restrooms are in the hallway next to the elevator, right to the right of the breakout rooms. Also, there is no Wi-Fi available for the event. Everyone is encouraged to unplug and really take in the rich information today. You'll find a survey on the back of your agenda. Please complete your survey at the end of the conference. More instructions will follow this afternoon. With this said, it is my pleasure and I'm happy to introduce Riverside Community College District Vice Chancellor Rebecca Goldware to share a few remarks. Rebecca Goldware is the Vice Chancellor for Institutional Advancement and Economic Development at the Riverside Community College District. She supported the Riverside ecosystem for nearly 2 decades, and while raising her family here, will continue supporting her community and the region. Prior to joining the district, Rebecca served as the Chief of Staff for Research and Economic Development at UC Riverside, where she supported large regional efforts, including the successful relocation of the California Air Resource Board to Riverside and the creation of the region's first wet lab incubator. Rebecca holds a Master in Business Administration from the University of Redlands, as well as a bachelor's degree in business from UC Riverside. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Rebecca Goldware.
No, take your notes. Thank you, Michael. Good morning. Thank you for attending the Growing a Future Regional Workforce for the Inland Empire Summit. We are so pleased that you've joined us today to explore the future of the Inland Empire workforce as we grapple with unprecedented growth across the region, climate and climate change, its impacts, and the continued need to address diversity, equity, and inclusion in our shared efforts to move every resident from poverty to self-sufficiency. I'd like to take a moment to draw attention to your centerpieces. I'd like to thank Growing Hope for the largely edible centerpieces grown locally by students. For more information on Growing Hope, that's on your table. For more than 100 years, the Riverside Community College District has educated individuals enriching our diverse communities, covering over 450 square miles in western Riverside County. With 3 accredited colleges, each serving as a Hispanic serving institution, the district strives to impact the social and economic mobility of its students by ensuring access, success, and equity for anyone who wants to gain a competitive advantage in the workforce by earning a certificate, associate's degree, or to transfer. We know that despite the many opportunities to secure a post-secondary degree or credential of value, the college going and completion rates in the Inland Empire remain among the lowest in the state and the nation. Our household wealth remains on par with the Central Valley, with just over 4 out of 10 households with incomes above the real cost of living. That leaves 60% of our population struggling to pay their bills, get quality childcare, provide reliable transportation, and create general wealth that can provide a safety net in an economic downturn. I think these are things you all in this audience know. Given the reality that many of our residents simply don't have the skills to earn and keep that good job that moves them from self-sufficiency, and that those same residents may have faced multiple barriers in achieving the requisite skills to get and keep a good job, the Riverside Community College District is working to develop the Inland Empire Technical Trade Center. To date, nearly $35 million has been raised through the efforts of Congressman Takano and Assemblymember Sabrina Cervantes to plan, purchase, and improve a future site for IETTC in the Jurupa Valley area. You may wonder, why Jurupa Valley? Jurupa Valley and the surrounding communities have nearly 500,000 people with a 20-minute drive of the identified potential site of IETTC. The center will be hosted by the community that has traditionally been marginalized, with one of the highest high school dropout rates in the region at 28%, and almost a third of all Jurupa Valley community residents between the age of 18 and 44 lacking a high school diploma. Just over 14% of residents have a 4-year degree, an indicator of higher lifetime earnings and lowered resiliency on social support services. We can do better. To ensure that the IETTC meets the region's future workforce needs, the district, in collaboration with a variety of internal and external partners and constituency groups, will utilize labor market information to ensure that education programs at the center lead from classroom to living wage career opportunities. The Inland Empire Technical Trade Center is one of many resources being developed among partners here today in an emerging ecosystem of important collaborative solutions to our most complex and pressing challenges. My thanks to all of you for the work that you are doing to pave the way for a more equitable and sustainable future in the Inland Empire. I'd like to specifically acknowledge the California Air Resources Board, UCR's Oasis Project, partners for their work to improve the quality of life and economic opportunities for our current and future residents. Cal State San Bernardino has been critically important in addressing the IT and cybersecurity threats that our region, state, and nation face now and into the future, including strengthening our energy grids and responding to cyber attacks that threaten national security. You will hear from panelists today on infrastructure, healthcare, goods movement, energy, water, and air that all play a critical role in getting to the IE to 2037 and beyond. In all of this, we must consider the imperative to meet our most important future challenges. At this time, I'd like to welcome Board of Trustees President, Mr. Bill Hedrick, to speak a little more about the Inland Empire Technical Trade Center. Trustee Hedrick.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm pleased to join you today on behalf of the Board of Trustees of RCCD, including Dr. Isak, who was unable to be with us today. The IETTC is, at heart, a collaborative commitment to do better for residents experiencing significant barriers to self-sufficiency and ultimately prosperity. IETTC partners include public and private employers, government, community, and education, And trade and labor organizations such as the Inland Empire Labor Council, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, San Bernardino Riverside Building Trades Council, and Southwest Carpenters. Through this collective effort, we can expand learning opportunities in the trades, developing paid apprenticeships that connect relevant classroom learning with job-centered technical training. We can also work to address new and innovative sectors of our future green and sustainable economy, including training for agriculture, water, and energy as we harness and use our natural resources to mitigate climate impacts and climate change. As shared, the Inland Empire Technical Trade Center, or IETTC, will provide knowledge and skill development for students while supporting public and private employers through a workforce pipeline that connects students to opportunities combining learning while earning. Our legislative partner, Assemblymember Cervantes, recently emphasized that, quote, "We must continue to develop and grow a skilled and locally trained workforce for our region to be able to compete on the global stage." That includes the work that we are doing here today as we envision a different future for the region's residents. One that includes addressing the need to diversify our local economy through innovation and entrepreneurship, creating new businesses and good jobs to keep the millions of residents anticipated to locate in the IE over the next 30 years here and off our already crowded highways. A future that addresses the impacts of goods and people movement across the region on our health and the well-being of our children. A future that by 2037, just 15 years from now, will seek to meet goals for carbon neutrality, a reduced reliance on fossil fuels, and to create sustainable and redundant energy systems. All of this will require us to be curious, to learn, to experiment, and to grow together as we determine the path to a more prosperous inland empire for every resident here and in the future. You will hear a bit more about the IETTC at lunch today. I want to be sure to acknowledge our partners, Growing Inland Achievement, represented today by Anne-Marie Sakrikoff, and the County of Riverside, represented by several attendees here today and led by Jeff Van Wagenen. Both GIA and the county have contributed significantly to make this event happen. I welcome you and wish you a successful summit today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor and Chairperson, for such wonderful remarks and for really opening us out in the way that we should today. Our next speaker will be Patrick Ellis, President and CEO at the Marietta Wildomar Chamber of Commerce and Chair of the Riverside County Workforce Development Board. Patrick Ellis has been in the chamber industry since 2007, starting as the president and CEO of the Moore Park Chamber of Commerce in Ventura County. After producing many measurable improvements under the dynamic shifting conditions in a downturn market, Patrick moved on to the Marietta Chamber of Commerce as the president and CEO. Patrick utilizes his boundless energy, great enthusiasm, strong leadership, and unmistakable trademark laugh to motivate his staff, where together they have revitalized the Marietta Chamber of Commerce. In 2017, Patrick led the merger of the Marietta Chamber and the Wildomar Chamber into the Marietta Wildomar Chamber of Commerce. In addition, Patrick is extremely active with the Southwest California Legislative Council, a coalition of 5 chambers to address federal, state, and county legislative issues. He also sits on the board of directors for the Economic Development Coalition and was appointed by Riverside County 3rd District Supervisor Chuck Washington to the Riverside County Workforce Development Board. Patrick has completed the Western Association of Chamber Executives Academy, a 3-year training programs for the new era of chamber management, and has served as the WACE Conference Committee numerous times. Patrick was born and raised in Alhambra, California, and he is first-generation Irish American. He and his wife, Karen, have 2 children, Liam and Brenna. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Michael. Can we give it up for Michael? It's hard to start the morning off, so thank you. It is my pleasure to be here this morning and represent the Workforce Development Board. Myself, Jamil, some of our other board members are here. We're very excited about the opportunity that's before us here for the Inland Empire. The Workforce Development Board is proud and excited to be co-hosting today's event. The name of today's event evidences why we're here. As part of the workforce development system, we recognize the need to prepare what our future holds. In the IE, we can view the future as either one of boundless opportunity or one marked by fear and scarcity. The future we claim is our choice. Here's what I mean. The labor market continues to be complex. COVID-19 led to workers critically assessing their profession trajectories. Many changed jobs or opted for non-traditional employment arrangements, leaving vacancies that persist today. And I also, see a lot that have gone into entrepreneurship as their own thing. They all had their side hustles during the period of time and now are doing that as their main hustle. Yet, even before COVID, the IE faced the prospect of uncharted labor complexities. Due to the mix of predominant industries, our region is particularly vulnerable to automation. Studies estimate that 48% to 63% of all jobs in the region are vulnerable to automation. 85% of jobs in the year 2030 do not yet exist. Those two things are very, very shocking for us and something that we have to be very aware of. We know that change is in store, and we're in a position to plan for and leverage that change in ways that benefit our region's workforce system. So with that in mind, we hope today's event sets the table for a future that we can view as having boundless opportunity. So it is, I think it's the next page here, yes. It is my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, and I think why we're all here this morning, is our Secretary, Natalie Pelugia. As appointed Secretary of the California Labor and Workforce Development Agency by Governor Gavin Newsom on July 14, 2021, Secretary Pelugia is the first Latina to serve as California Labor Secretary. In her role, Secretary Pelugia serves as the Governor's Cabinet Advisor on labor issues and employment programs for workers and businesses throughout California. She oversees the state departments and boards that enforce labor laws, including minimum wage and occupancy safety standards, provides state disability and unemployment insurance benefits, fund workforce training and apprenticeship programs, combat wage theft, protect injured workers, and arbitrate public sector contract disputes. So I thought I was busy, but I got nothing. Natalie is a nationally recognized thought leader in public sector business, transformation, strategy, and implementation with over 20 years of experience in federal government and higher education. She spent almost half of her public service career within the U.S. Department of Labor, where she served first as the compliance officer with the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, and most recently as a senior management advisor for the Secretary of Labor under, this is long, President Barack Obama's administration. In addition to her work on worker protection and enforcement strategy, I can stop if you want. Yeah. See, it sounds like your staff wrote yours like my staff wrote mine. So please welcome Secretary Pelugia.
It's all staying. Thank you. You're so kind. Thank you. Good to see you. It is too early for all that.
Oh my gosh, it's also too early for this. Next time, I know Chancellor Isak is not here, but 9 a.m. next time? Because 8 a.m. really, I'm just like, guys, thank you for having me. It is so awesome to be here again and to keep just going on discussions about this region and workforce and economic development and all of the kind of momentum, just keeping all that going is really exciting, and I'm honored to even be here and speak to you about all the things I've spoken to you all before about. I'm hoping today will be slightly different. I want to thank Chancellor Isak and his team. I know he is not here today, but he was the one that called me and said, you have to change all of your calendar. You have to be here for this summit. And as is often right with the Chancellor, he was right, and I'm so happy to be here. And we wish him our best wishes to recover. He's not feeling that great, so I hope he's back in the fight soon. So I'm not going to speak for too long, but I did want to come here today and once again emphasize for everyone in this room who's been working so hard and trying to envision a future for this region that is not based on models of the past, but based on something new and exciting and focused on prosperity and equity and sustainability, that we're really at a time like no other for California. You've heard it a million times. You know, we have a governor and we have a legislature that's really focused on climate sustainability, equity, and economic development. So that's really nice. And that means that all of us follow suit, and our work is also centered on those principles. But what's even better is that they're backing up all of that with a lot of funding. So not just from the state, but from the federal government. Unprecedented amounts of funding to move our state and our regions in the direction of those three principal goals: climate sustainability, equity, and economic development and growth. So let's just talk a little bit about the money, because I always like to throw out some points to kind of really bring this home. Many of you have been engaged on SURF, so that's, $600 million, drop in the bucket. $600 million just for economic development planning and to kick off projects. That's just for California, across 13 regions. Infrastructure investments by the state, not by the feds, by the state alone in the last budget, approximated $15 billion over 5 years. $15 billion. Most of it going to transportation, but across many other projects. Let's talk about the Federal Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Over $1 trillion for the country, not for California, but to date, we've already been committed $10 billion in federal funding for infrastructure, okay? That's just through formula funding and some projects. There is still a ton of billions of dollars out for grabs in a competitive manner for states, but not just for states. All of you will be able to apply for that funding directly. Cities, counties, regions, they don't have to go through the state when they apply. So just think about the enormity of what we are witnessing in this moment. It truly is a convergence of values, action, and funding. And I just, want it to sink in for a moment, because people talk about it a lot, just like we talk about equity a lot, but if you let it sink in, it is potentially transformative, truly transformative. And what's also really incredible is that a lot of this funding is going out directly to communities. So it's not coming through state governments. It's not the state that's going to run all these projects. The funding is up for grabs for regions and communities so that they are a part of the transformation. They're not just a recipient of it. They're not just these passive, actors anymore waiting for the state to decide what projects are funded. You all get to be active participants in the decision-making about where you want this region to go, and then you have to compete, which is also kind of scary because there's a lot of others competing for this funding as well. But you get to be part of this change. So really, there's no looking back, and the time is now. The time to prepare is now. The real question that remains is who is going to succeed, right? Who in California is really going to do something with this opportunity, and who will fall behind and not really be able to grab that bull by the horns. As I turn my page. So that's, something I really wanted to discuss with all you. Nothing is guaranteed for Inland Empire. I wish it was, because this is my favorite region. It's the region I visited more than any other in this state. I love coming here, but nothing is guaranteed. And nothing's guaranteed for any other region or community unless certain conditions are met. So I want to just really briefly touch on those, kind of like bring everyone together, have a same fact base and understanding of what those conditions are. So the first one is that any investments or proposals that are put forward by your community, your region, city, counties, whatever level it may be, they have to reflect the federal and state priorities, period. The federal government is no longer telling you what your economic development path is. They're not telling you what industries you should focus on. They're not telling you what clusters you need to develop. They're not telling you what your competitive advantage is. You get to decide that. But once you decide, when you actually apply for funding, you have to be aligned with the priorities that the state and the federal government have laid out. I'll repeat them again. Climate resiliency, equity, and prosperity in the form of economic growth. Those are the three goals. If your projects and your plans align with that, you're gonna have the advantage. For all of those groups that in the past really have been maybe excluded from decision making, they haven't been at those planning tables, just know that this is a check, okay? This is a control that is in place. Climate resiliency, let's all repeat it. It's like a mantra. We're going to do meditation. Equity, prosperity, economic growth, okay? What else is required? Everyone's heard about this a million times, but I'll say it again. Inclusive planning and decision-making tables. So we can't get to equitable proposals and investments if we didn't start with an equitable approach to planning. And what that means, equity is not just about having people all around the table, oh, kumbaya, we're all aligned, we're all gonna work together. No, it actually means empowering groups. So there's a power component to equity, empowering groups that traditionally have had no voice and have not been empowered to make decisions for their communities and their region. Okay, so that gets a little complex. So it's not just like the first step is getting people around the table. The hard work is creating a governance structure for decision making about what proposals will be put forward that actually reflects equity. And we're going to be looking at that. And if it's not happening, the funding's at risk and the feds are on the same boat. So that's really important. That's another condition. Third, I'm not going to talk too much about this, but counties and cities, elected officials, and the non-electeds who are running your city and county governments got to get ready. You've got to be aligned with what your planning tables are saying. You've got to be ready to, have your permitting move quicker, your approvals move faster. You have to be also at the table and partnering and ready to move a huge amount of funding through your communities, right? Delays in that are just gonna be devastating because the opportunity is now. It's not 10 years from now, it's right now. And lastly, workforce planning. God, workforce planning has to be happening right now, and it has to be strong. And what do I mean by workforce planning? It's not just like the programs that we have today, okay? I'm not just talking about the workforce development boards and all the work that they do day to day. We have to be discussing with industry. You gotta get companies and businesses and industry at the table. They are part of envisioning the future. And that's where the rubber hits the road, right? Economic growth happens through industry, through business, through entrepreneurship. Any plans, any ideas about where you want this region to go in the future has to have the question, how do we develop the workforce for that? Every single plan. You guys want to do massive infrastructure projects? How do we develop the workforce for that? You want to do IT expansion? how do we develop the workforce for that? Every single plan should be, thinking about workforce. That is the key, and it's the sort of the middle between equity and economic development and prosperity. That's right at the heart of it. So we got to start having those real conversations, sector-based conversations today, so that you're ready for what's coming. So I'm pretty direct, as many of you know, and I'm never going to run for office. So I feel really liberated to talk about what I want to talk about. And God, I wish I would have had an intro where Tim came up and said, Natalie's infectious laugh. And no, I didn't get any of that. I just got next time. So I do want to talk about some of the challenges that I'm seeing here today. It's uncomfortable, but I'm going to talk about it, because when we don't talk about things, we let them fester, we don't make progress. I'm just going to talk about some of these realities that are occurring not just in your region, in other regions as well. But because I care so much about this region, I thought I have to talk about these issues. So I know that there are many who are focused on real community needs. They're focused on worker needs, on environmental justice advocacy. And they have felt historically oppressed by traditional economic development processes. They've also felt very oppressed by traditional business development processes. So the feeling runs deep, and it is justified. It is real. It's not based on something made up. I also know that labor, worker, environmental advocacy groups, community-based organizations can feel threatening to traditional business interests and more traditional approaches to economic development. Because oftentimes they come in, they're very impassioned, and it might appear that what they're offering is an all or nothing approach, even though that's not always the case, and compromise is always at the heart of what they want to do, but they can feel threatening. Those feelings are also legitimate. They are also justified. So for me, I think the key is acknowledging a very imperfect past. The way we've done things in the past, the models we have in the past are really imperfect. And our present is very delicate, because how we decide to move into a future now is either going to make or break a lot of our regions. So for the traditionalists, more the established power players in the region, don't brush off the past. Don't brush off the hurt and the pain that exclusivity in decision-making has caused for many in your own community. Show you understand it and are ready to move to something better, not only by broadening your tables, but by using your established power and influence to empower other ideas and visions that you may not have at the top of your list. To the new influencers in town, I don't know, I'm not really, I'm not that young, but the influencers, I wish I was one of those. Community organizations, worker advocacy groups, environmental justice advocates, there's many others. You gotta push past some of that pain. You can't hold on to the pain of the past. You have to push past it, and you have to give the other side a chance to demonstrate their ability to grow and change. You have to recognize the value that they bring to the table, and you have to model inclusivity. Because if you don't, you become just as exclusive as our old mental models were. So what are we gaining by all of that? The goal is not to replicate old, insufficient, ineffective models. The goal is to be voices in the room that help create the new and better and improved models. So I always think, when you're faced with a challenge, whatever it might be, you just have to lay out the options. What are my options on the table? And in this case, there aren't too many, actually. I wish there were more that I could offer. So we either take a leap of faith, we come together, or we divide the region. And the division is going to lead to a very real consequence of no funding coming through this region. And that would be heartbreaking. So unfortunately, there really isn't an in-between. This is a one path or the other. So the goal on both sides is to envision the new and create the new, and it's a tall order and it's not easy, but I know it's possible here. And I already like feel this like, ah, man, she's got some nerve, man. She comes in here, she's an outsider. She's not even a Californian. She came from DC. I feel Californian now, by the way. She has this privilege to come here and opine on what's going on and offer these nice words and these lofty opinions and no real solutions, and she's not here negotiating. And you're right. You're absolutely right. But you can't claim that I don't care, because I really do care deeply about this region, when many others are distracted by shinier objects than the Inland Empire. And I think maybe in part it's because I really do like redemption stories. I like seeing underdogs win. I like seeing them come on top and, you know, against all odds. And that's what I want for Inland Empire. Like, that's what I want. But it's more than that. I come back here because for me, the shiny object is every person and every group and every stakeholder group that I've met with in the Inland Empire, both Riverside and San Bernardino. The passion and the vision and the commitment to a more sustainable, healthy, and abundant region, it's like seeping through your pores. Like, you don't even recognize it. I get to see it because I'm the outsider. So when I come in, I feel that energy. It's palpable. So nobody wants status quo here. Nobody does. And it's spoken about out loud in forums like this and also at much smaller tables across your region. So that's why I come back, because that energy is here, that persistence is here. And then there's something else, which is here, I actually feel like some of the talk that we see in a lot of other regions is backed by real solutions. So when I hear about the Inland Empire Trade Tech Center, for example, as one solution to eradicating poverty and changing the narrative about this region, you know, to support climate resilience, equity, and sustainable economic growth, I'm really moved. Like, it moves me. But then I see how engaged your elected officials are, right? I mean, Sabrina Cervantes, she was able to get the funding to buy the land for your future Inland Empire Tech Center. That's impressive, and she did it quickly. You know, I see Congressman Takano speaking, and he is clearly very passionate about all the work that you're doing. So I leave you today with a couple of thoughts. You are all so much closer aligned than you might think. And you have now at your fingertips the resources to make significant social and economic change for your community. You're also the leaders of this community. All of you in this room, you're the heart. You are the ones thinking about what you want this to look like, not just 2 years, 5 years, but 30 years from now. You're gonna be 75 years old in 20 years, Tim. We were just talking about this. Like, 30 years goes by fast, right? Like, we're thinking about things that we're not even gonna benefit from, and that's what you all are doing. So, you know, you are the leaders, so you have to lead. You have to lead. You have to lead change through renewed trust and compassion and love for one another. And if you do that, I have no doubt you guys are gonna succeed, and I'm gonna continue being your greatest fan up from Sacramento and one of your biggest supporters. So I thank you again, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting and in the morning. Not the meeting, the morning. This is not a meeting. Thank you guys, appreciate y'all.
Give me just a second here to get reorganized. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. You're a little taller than me. Thank you so much, Secretary Pellucci, for being here, for making it happen, and for being real. It's not always easy, especially when you're walking into a new space. Climate resiliency, equity, prosperity, and economic growth. Did I get that right? I sure did. Okay, thank you. I was writing it down, taking notes, and we repeated it, so now we learned. If you weren't sure, we are excited about new funding. We'll now transition to our first panel on good and quality jobs in the Inland Empire, moderated by our very own Michelle Decker, President and CEO of the Inland Empire Community Foundation. In the meantime, please enjoy this short video from our colleagues at Introducing Youth to American Infrastructure, who are gearing up for their virtual innovation challenge that will include the Inland Empire.
Are you ready to innovate?
Are you ready to innovate?
Are you ready to innovate for the AYA Innovation Challenge? As young people begin to return to society and take advantage of the systems around them, we've introduced an event where the youth can come together and collaborate, offering solutions for tackling climate change and equity as they combat focused issues that are unique to their communities. The AYA North American Innovation Challenge is providing an opportunity to be exposed to careers and industry professionals.
We are building great youth awareness of mobility, transportation, careers, and the critical roles they play in building and shaping communities.
This is a call for local host organizers. We invite you to take part in the AYA Innovation Challenge. Join us as we innovate the workforce of tomorrow.
This is a great opportunity for youth involvement.
The future needs us, and we are looking for the next generation of leaders. Join us as we continue to reimagine and develop the future of the workforce.
Are you ready to innovate?
As we're getting settled, I just want to say thank you, Madam Secretary. You're in the work with us, and you see us. The good, the challenging, the promising. I'm not sure, have we had an ally like that up in Sacramento? This is a terrific gift. Thank you again. Is Victoria in the room? Deb? Where's Deb Mustaine? Okay, I know we had a switch out with our Riverside County person. We're gonna get started. I think because I know these panelists in this conversation, we could go all day, but we have to make space for other things. Excited to be here. Thank you very much. We have a 4.2% unemployment rate in the Inland Empire as of August. That's good. Everybody feels the pinch of that and trying to find workers. But that's not the whole conversation, and it's not certainly the conversation we're having here today. We're really talking about what are the increasing share of good and high quality jobs that we can create with a diversifying economy. And I think very often the equity sweet spot really is those who have less than a 4-year degree. It is a vast proportion of our workforce. It is the workforce that will fall if it isn't rising, and for those families. We just recently rolled out the Cultivating Inland Empire Latino Opportunity Fund, the Cielo Fund. I was very excited to do this with the Center for Social Innovation. We had a report done, Aquí Estamos, and in that report we learned we often focus on bachelor's degrees and we say, oh, we're at about 22%, but Latinos are at 11% in our region. Poverty rates for certain families are not meeting the median of where Anglo families might be, white families might be. A childhood poverty is at 11% versus 22%, or 22%, excuse me, versus 11%. So I just want to put that out that for those of us involved in workforce, there's a whole army of people who are out there involved in social services who are trying to keep people out of the loop of poverty and homelessness and other issues. So it's really incumbent on us to figure out how to move this labor force forward. The other challenging thing that I'm going to do before I turn this over to the panel is it's that definitional thing. It's like, what quality jobs? And you can really go down a rabbit hole for this. But I want to, and Tim, I didn't know you were going to be here, but it's the High Road Training Partnership definition plus a few other things. And I want to put that out today because as you're milling about, I want us to have, this is one of the places where we need to have difficult conversations. What do we mean? Do we agree? Where do we disagree? How do we tighten up that definition so that we're actually all moving people down that nice big boulevard of high quality jobs? So on the HRTP website, quality jobs provide family sustaining wages. They provide health benefits, a pension, worker advancement opportunities, and I think we're going to hear how key that is, collective worker input. They are stable, they are predictable, they are safe and free of discrimination. They have the potential to transform workers' lives and create resilient, thriving firms and communities and a more just and equitable region. And I think some other definitions, as I'm in conversations, they're jobs that provide work-life balance, where you can take care of your kids, you can be involved in your community. They are jobs where the company and the business gets environmental sustainability and climate resilience and good air quality. They are jobs with businesses who are invested in the region and are not just extracting labor and wealth, but are committed to growing our communities. And finally, it includes unionized and non-unionized jobs for companies that can meet many of these characteristics. So this is kind of a perfect definition. This is kind of a, fantastical definition. But our work is to say, where are you succeeding and where do you need support? And how can we help you move towards more characteristics that get us on those high quality jobs? We are not perfect. To the Secretary's point, we are in the long game to do this, and it is going to take time. So with that, I want to turn to this fabulous panel, and I am going to ask all of you to introduce yourself, name, title, organization, and because we're talking about jobs and workforce, what do you actually do? Dr. Scott, I want to start with you.
Okay, I'm gonna go real quick. I'm the grandmother up here. For 40 plus years. I've been in public transportation, 9 systems. I've run 4 of them the last 5 years. You saw our youth. Okay, my daddy used to say, I can show you better than I can tell you. So it's been all about youth development across the critical infrastructure sectors, of which there are 16. I've usually been more of an East Coast type of person, but grandkids will do everything. So 7 years ago, I came to California, and I told my board, Aya's home in California is Inland Empire, okay? And so
We're
honored
grateful.
to be here.
We're grateful for that, yes.
Honored to be here, and we can do it, okay?
Yes.
So that's it, okay?
Ibsen, please, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ibsen Lanas. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Riverside Community Hospital, just down the street. We are a large hospital system. We are a STEMI stroke receiving center. We're a transplant center, 2,800 employees, just right down in downtown Riverside, and very proud to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. James?
All right. Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. My name's James Titus. I'm the General Manager of the Walgreens Distribution Center in Moreno Valley. I'm over retail supply chain, central pharmacy ops, and transportation for Southern California. We service 7 states, 880 stores to include Hawaii. We employ 600 hourly team members, 60 leaders, 70 truck drivers, and over 100 pharmacists. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jackie Melendez, and I'm the Executive Director of IEGO, Inland Economic Growth and Opportunity. We are an organization and a network serving all of the Inland Empire. We have over 70 organizations that are part of the work that we're doing to advance inclusive economic development in our region and also in the state of California through the example of the things that we're doing here. I'm super excited to be in a room with so many amazing leaders, both new and of the grandmother persuasion as well, and super excited about all the things that we can accomplish. I'll say one last thing, and that's that I spent 18 years in local government, starting in redevelopment back in the day. Economic developers in the house know what I'm talking about. Yes, and I left a job in local government because I believe that inclusive economic development is the future, and if folks that don't do economic development every day aren't part of this work, to the Secretary's point, we're never going to bridge the gap between what the community believes economic development should be and what folks who actually do it on a day-to-day basis, what that is. So we're here to bridge that gap, and I appreciate all of you who are in that fight, because we are in transitional times.
Yeah. All right, so we want to know where the good jobs are going to be. What's the growth of good and high-quality jobs? Dr. Scott, I'm starting with you.
Okay, so I'm going to start out, and what I'm going to tell you is that I'm not going to focus on of course, clean energy, cybersecurity, everything that's professional, technical, specialties in terms of operations, maintenance, and control systems. I will tell you that these are sectors, and I'm speaking from what I know, the majority of the positions do not require a 4-year degree, and we want everybody to have everything, okay, and I'm saying they do not, but they are very specialized community colleges, apprenticeship programs, technical institutes, so what do we need people to have? And we're multi-sectoral. Digital literacy and proficiency is absolutely critical. The jobs that are here, whether they're water, transportation, energy, or whatever, the jobs that are here require not just proficiency, they require literacy, big data analytics, critical problem solving, soft skills. We must not look at just jobs, they have to be careers, and we're gonna have to be nimble and constantly, from a continuous learning standpoint, constantly be retooling toolkits. So what we want is not these little siloed systems, but we want a K to grade where throughout your career and your lifetime, from the time you K till you to grandmama, okay, that you're able to research, upsert, keep your skills sharp, and I will assure you that if we can get that digital literacy excellence combined with the big data analytics, the critical thinking, the soft skills and all that, people will be able to plug and play in jobs as well as careers, and they will have portability across the sectors, period. All right, that's my little beginning spiel.
All right.
Okay.
Gibson.
That's it.
At Riverside Community Hospital, we are growing. It's really important to our organization that we're bringing good health care to this area. Oftentimes, patients and families have to leave the area to get complex services like transplant services to Orange County or LA. And so we have been growing our services here in the Inland Empire to serve our community, which also translates to a lot of more jobs and specialized skills that we need to bring to our hospital. And I think when people think about hospitals, they often think about nursing as the main workforce, which a lot of it is, but a very large population of our staff are not nurses. They are technical positions that have gone to technical trade schools and other training programs. And those jobs are actually difficult for us to fill often, and so we see a lot of growth there, and so we see that coming up in the future a lot, especially for us.
Yeah, in supply chain, I mean, you obviously see in the Inland Empire, supply chain has obviously dominated the real estate, especially in Moreno Valley, Ontario. Every time I turn around, Amazon's building another building, and you know, Target just built a 2.5 million square foot district. So the labor market is very, very competitive, and the wages show that. I think we have a lot of good jobs, but how do we get a good job from a career? I think entry level is great. I like entry level jobs, but that shouldn't be your career. We need to take entry level and say, okay, what's next for you? And I think it goes down the road of maintenance, IT, supervision, pharmaceutical. I mean, so what's next for you? Because what I don't like to see is someone who started in an entry level and now they're still in an entry level position. So we have to figure out how we get that individual from entry level into a sustainable career.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jackie, where are you seeing some job growth in the sectors that we...
So I think what we've been doing and the work that we've been doing in the region is really focusing on what we call the 5 pillars of the green economy, and we're really looking at, we all know in you know the dominance that what we call future sustainable logistics has in our region and in our economy. That's really critical. Advanced manufacturing, we need to do a lot more in that space. Cyber and IT, our friends at Cal State San Bernardino, where Cal State San Bernardino folks at? I saw a few of you earlier. You know, great things going on over there in cyber. How do we get folks and people into some of those careers? How do we get them exposed? One of the issues, you know, I grew up in a working class family. I grew up in poverty, and we tend to go into the to the tracks that we know, right? So my father was my grandfather, all my uncles were truck drivers, and so what do the men in the family do? They go into truck driving because that's what they know. They might, try to avoid it for a while and say, I'm not going to do that, and then eventually they end up there because, that's how it works. We see that in other areas, like with firefighters, right? If your dad was a firefighter, your uncles were firefighters, you're going to understand that space a little bit more. So some of the things that I'm really excited about is what we're doing in the arts. We always tend to talk about, some of these like really like, foundational pieces of the economy, and like we just lose all the young folks. They're just like, oh, that's so boring. I don't want to do that. I know Karen is laughing because she gets like super amped and juiced up about some of these things, and I'm like, no, that people want to be influencers nowadays. So how do we take what we're doing and all these great things? How do we help to like gear those folks into these spaces where they're like, and those of you who laughed, I did hear a couple of chuckles. Like that's a real thing. When I was 15, 20, 21, that wasn't a real thing, but today it is. Like these kids are going to make more money than I am with all my fancy degrees on YouTube and Etsy and all these other places, and we need to be figuring out ways, and we're doing that through engaging artists and trying to make some of this work. I'm just going to say it, sexy, because a lot of it is, and I know we work on our flyers and they're really great, but how are we going to compete with TikTok and all these other things? We have to do what we're doing in a sexier way.
James, how do folks come to your, how do folks find you? How do you find workers? We need to close the racial wealth gap in this region if we're really talking about equity. I'm not, maybe we'll start back with Dr. Scott, but some things you said prompted that. How are we going to do it? Dr. Scott, you're very focused on Black and brown youth being in the infrastructure space. And we see some bifurcation in our sectors, that some people have certain high quality jobs and other people have, lower wage jobs without benefits. What are we doing to bridge that?
It's clusters, and it's women across the board. So the focus of and we're unapologetic about it, okay, are across all of the sectors, the data, and I don't make data up, I just use the data that, and all the sectors will tell you the same thing. The persistent challenges are women across the board, okay, and youth of young people of color. And the greatest kind of sludge, when you look at all the data, is African Americans and Native Americans have the hardest problems. Everybody's got the problem, but once you start working in terms of making speed of getting through structural racism, all of the stuff, it's Native American community and African American communities that are the most stuck. Won't go through the history there, think most of it is pretty. So we're unapologetic in terms of that, okay? I will tell you what we do. I don't sell infrastructure. I tell people all the time, I fell into this from academia 44 years ago. And what I have been blessed to do is be in the business of community building for the better part of 45 years of my life. Infrastructure shapes your life. And so those young people that you heard talking up there, they consider themselves, they are community builders. And what they want to be doing is connecting themselves with all the other young community builders. When you were talking earlier, Secretary, about what's meaningful. So you listen, they don't know what these careers are, and guess what we can do? We're the ones, like Jackie was saying, I went what I knew. I went what I knew. I'm saying to you, there are 16 national critical infrastructure sectors. Name them. Grown people can't name them. So how in the heck would we think that young people would know them? Okay? And what these sectors do is they literally shape our lives. So once young people make that connection, what are you interested in? Clean water, a good transportation, who got the tree, who doesn't have the tree, where's the health care services, financial services is a critical infrastructure. Once they make the connection, there is nothing that infrastructure, that's where you want to be, okay? And so anyway, that awareness, helping them to make that, connect that dot, that it is really about, we try to get them to build and grow their civic muscle, because whether or not they go into these careers or not, they shape your life, and you need to be part of the public service and the involvement and understand it's important, that these sectors are important throughout your life. And that's the magic sauce. What we bring, all of us in this room, because it's gonna take the village, all of us, whether you're academia, whether you're labor, community-based organizations, families, business, I'm saying it, business. Then I'm gonna shut up. Business, okay, that's what you say. You must be at the table. You got to be. I'm talking about not check the box that you went to a career day. I'm talking about deep involvement. And right now, tell you the honest God truth with you knew it or not, you spend 10 times more money when it gets to the actual career readiness, not the traditional education part. In the United States, what happens is that the majority of that falls on private and public sector employers, but largely on the private sector. So you're putting a lot of money into it. We just all need to work together, all pull together, and help our youth and see that these careers are exactly what they are asking for, which is that I want to be able to have a voice at the table. And so that's what it's all about. And so if we all team up together, we are absolutely unbeatable. But all this siloing and fragmentation and who got what and competitiveness and this sector and that sector and who's got this, the old script. Shut up, Bev. New day. Okay.
I tried the timer,
She
you know.
tried to tell me.
I'm just here. Just wave at me. Just Ibsen, how you closing racial equity gaps and worker gaps at the hospital?
Yeah, you know, we focus a lot on internal growth. We're looking at our entry level, similar to what James was talking about. We look a lot at our internal positions and our entry level positions, like our housekeepers and our food service workers, and how do we give them the support to move to our higher level positions that are more technical and skilled in nature. And we do a lot around education support, that's money, as well as scheduling support for time, so that they have the time and money to go to school, and so that we can move them into our higher quality positions.
Yeah. James?
Yeah, that was a focal point when I took over. I felt bad because my predecessor was female. I'm like, well, now we're losing a female senior leaders. But now 50% of my senior leadership team is female. So we definitely opened the door for that. We also have a large deaf community. We have a transitional work group to try to get team members with disability to be self-sufficient. I mean, we do the, you know, we bring in Cody. We bring in the School of the Deaf. I mean, we try to, this year when we brought in interns, we said, okay, what population do we need to increase in our leadership team? So we brought in 2 African-American interns, and we just hired both of them now that they graduated. So now they're entry-level supervisors in our DC, and then, you know, the sky's the limit with them because we open the door for additional opportunity in the DC. But we try to identify the gaps and then open the door to fill the gaps with the right equitable population. And we are the most diverse distribution center Walgreens has in Moreno Valley. We were selected to be the Hispanic Heritage Video for the company, so we created that here in Moreno Valley. So very proud of the diversity we have in Moreno Valley.
So if anybody's confused about diversity, equity, and inclusion and operationalizing that on the floor, they can come in and talk with you.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things we're most proud of.
Yeah, thank you. I'm circling back right to you. I'm coming right back to you. You know it. That's why you're right there. Jackie, what do you think?
I'm going to answer this a little bit differently, and I'm going to say, raise your hand if you are a workforce person, if your job every day is to help create jobs, help to counsel students to get them into jobs. Anybody? All right, I love it. Nice. It's really hard work, so thank you for what you do. The first time I met James, when he just became the DC, or he was about to become the DC, he said to me, Jackie, how do I get more women in management? These are the kinds of questions that we have to answer. These are the kinds of questions we have to be asking to figure these things out. One of the things that is really important to know in the Inland Empire is we already have amazing diversity. We have amazing diversity. That's not the challenge. The challenge is how do we get those folks into the upper echelons? How do we make sure that those folks, to James' point, do not stay sort of in these entry-level jobs? How do we start talking about wealth management and not just, you know, a job? And if you've been in this space for 10, 15, 20 years, are you working with mentors and folks that are helping you to understand how is it that I get the next job? How do I be competitive? You know, how do I negotiate salary? Who likes to negotiate salaries? Anybody? Yeah? Oh, John. Oh, there you go. Okay. As a female entrepreneur, as a female executive, I've had people that have helped me throughout my career, mentors that have said, let me see that contract. No, you need to ask for this, you need to ask for that. And that's something, especially, I'm going to talk for Latinas, but women especially, we're not taught to do that. We're taught to say, okay, yeah, whatever you think. No, we need to have more conversations, and we need to be more aggressive about how we're managing our careers. It's not just about, you know, let me just take what I can get. And I understand that because a lot of us, we're in situations and we just need to pay the bills, right? A lot of our students are in situations where they just need to pay the bills. But guess what? At some point, we have to turn paying the bills into bossing up and getting that next promotion and saying, how do I become a supervisor? What does that require? Do I need to get a certificate? Do I need to go to training? What does that look like? So we have to think about diversity and women and people of color and folks with disabilities. We have to think about them at all the levels, not just getting them their foot in the door. If we do that, we're not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can I just add one thing? So we also look at compensation as equitable. So when we give annual increases, when we bring people, we make sure that we don't have males at the top, females at the bottom. We want to make sure that, you know, it's equitable for everybody, and everyone that provides the same contribution gets compensated the same. So we do a great job of making sure that it is truly equitable for everyone. So.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll just
Dr.
say,
Beth.
I tell people on that point, okay, they're offering you what salary? Okay, what do you really want? What do you actually want? And then they say, I don't know. Okay, I want you to find the number that makes you so uncomfortable you want to throw up, and that's what you're going to ask for. And you know what?
You didn't know you'd be getting career advice today.
No,
there are a lot of bosses that are going to be frustrated.
It's important because we're very good at getting people a job, right? We can get people a job. There's plenty of jobs, right? We need to have conversations about how do you get your favorite job, your best job, the job that you were absolutely 100% born to do. I have the great privilege of having a job that I love. I wake up in the morning, and even on the hardest days, I love it. Not everybody has that privilege. It's a gift and a privilege, and we need to be working harder to help people find those spaces where they feel like the work I do is a gift and a privilege.
Jackie, you're speaking, and this is what we're talking about, right? Systems change. People within systems connect. We start asking different questions, and we start staring at the data really hard about who is moving within the system. And we all need to, you know, we all have to have like our equity stats like right down to preach. So I did cut off the grandmother, and you just know I'm cursed for the rest of the day because I went down the panel. Dr. Scott, please.
No, you're not cursed. I wanted to say now, you heard all the passion, but now let's deal with the other part of the business side. And that is that you've heard words up here like intentionality. When the secretary spoke, I don't want to see another capital program plan that does not have with it a people plan. I'm not asking everybody to stand up right now and say, do you or not, because I can tell you most don't, okay? So the point I'm saying is that having data, these are the things that hold us up. BLS census level data is not workforce planning data. So we don't have those kind of data sets. We need to get data informed We need to understand what are the core competencies that are required to do these positions. What are the core positions across energy and transportation and water system? We're going to find there are a lot of similarities that lead to the opportunities to have stackable credentials, to have portability, but we have got to bring the same strategic human resource management as an element of your risk planning has got to be baked in, and it is not an aside thing, okay? So as a business person, and for the most part, our HR systems are not at that level. And so we do initiatives, we do programs, we go around with pieces of information, and when you start talking about how you can talk even across your sector, let alone from a multi-sectoral standpoint in terms of looking at what are the mutual opportunities. I can tell you, I'm transport. When you got a lineman out there, the same one I want on my signal track and I cannibalize, and it makes no sense, okay? And so these are the kinds of things that we have the opportunity to do when we really start drilling and really take this to a whole nother level. Okay, and I believe that IE's competitive advantage, you can touch decision making, you can do it. We can do it. Hello.
That is my next question. What do we need in place from where you sit, what, and your data, real workforce planning, real worker planning integrated into these infrastructure plans? Ibsen, what do you need? What makes a difference when things are working well?
I think, in thinking about the type of workforce that we need for the future, it really is about schools and the trainings that are available here locally in the Inland Empire and near our hospital, and the partnerships that those schools have with our hospital to get those students trained in our facility so they understand how it really is to work in that job, so that when they enter the actual workforce, they're ready and able to hit the floor as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna just break in here if I can a little bit. And that means that I'm gonna tell you, I've been an academic, and I like teaching what I've always taught, and I understand. That means we're gonna have to get through the ivory towers and say, excuse me, hell no, that's what you've been doing, but now you're gonna sit down and you're gonna really understand yourself, because we're dealing with industry and all that, because what's happening is that kids are coming from schools, and it doesn't matter, Carnegie Mellon, all of them, and they're coming to schools and coming out with all these degrees, and they get into the workforce and they are not ready. And so that means that there have to be some real radical readjustments where everybody has to open up and understand the fact that it's a collaboration, all that kind of stuff like that. So I'm only saying it because that is one of the things that somewhat tortures me, is that you walk in and then there are all these fiefdoms and nobody wants to go tell the most senior person that, you've been doing the same script for whatever, and now you need to whatever. It's not to be embarrassing. This is war, okay, in terms of what's going to happen for the future, and we all have to be about putting, just let the foolishness go to the side and get and move forward together. And I will tell you, you find a lot of that in traditional education.
And I think we're not saying it here, but there is tremendous opportunity to grow dual enrollment, career technical education, apprenticeships, internships and externships, earn and learn.
Yes.
Tremendous opportunity. I don't think we're scratching the surface for the Inland Empire. We could lead in this. We don't have launch here today, our launch partnership with Charles Henkel's, but just want to put that out. I know it's been heavy on manufacturing, but it can grow into so many other sectors, and that will get people more ready. I'll just say I have a 17-year-old. He does not know what he's doing. We're pulling our hair out. And he's not a 4-year kid. He's just not a 4-year kid. He's definitely going to be a 2-year kid. He's definitely going to be a trades kind of kid. And I'm excited for him because he looks at me and he's like, I do not want to live to work, mother. But yeah, we're all facing this. What is it going to take? James?
Yeah, so for me, it'd be nice to have somebody to come out and see what our day-to-day looks like. I have the majority of my staff, my hourly staff is female, but unfortunately, I have 0 female maintenance technicians. How do we get females in the maintenance sector, the IT sector? My only female IT person just retired, thankfully. She got to retire. But, I mean, how do we get the diversity in the, not the good jobs, but the better jobs? Because what I don't want, like I said, I don't want the entry level to be females and now the specialty, the maintenance, the IT, the pharmaceutical to be male driven. So it'd be nice to come out, because four-year college is not for everyone. I mean, I have a degree in engineering. I'm a general manager of a, pharmaceutical distribution center. I didn't see that coming. So, how do we transition people? Our interns, when they get up to speak in front of, they're so nervous. They don't have people skills. And then when we hire them on, we have to develop the soft skills of how to have a personable conversation, how to treat someone like a human being, how to have empathy, sympathy, and the soft skills necessary to truly become a leader. And it's not just the technical skills. To be honest with you, that's the easy part of my job. The technical skills, we can teach that. It's the soft skills, the understanding, and those types of things. It'd be nice to get help with those skills, because I could promote a lot of people if they could develop those types of skills.
Okay. Jackie, what do we need?
Okay, so on the data point, academics and folks who love data and research, cover your ears, okay? So here's the deal. We can make all the reports and all the fancy data and put, great covers on them and all that, but if those reports do not reflect the folks who you are actually writing about, then it's just paper. It's just a nice, fancy, bound document that doesn't mean anything. We have to be connected to the people that we serve, the people we design programs for. We have to use and integrate human-centered design. If you are not sitting down with folks who you actually, on a regular basis, for me, that's my family. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I'm the only one, who has a master's degree in my family. We're working class folks. A lot of my family are still in poverty. Just because one of us went to college doesn't mean the rest of us got out, right? So making sure that you're connected with the students, with the people that you're serving. Go to an Art LeBeau concert and hang out. You'll see black and brown folks. We are dancing to you want to say that, we don't get along? You come to an Art LeBeau concert, we are dancing in the aisles together to Brenton Wood. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that needs to be making it into our reports and talking about what people live on a day-to-day basis and what is in their hearts and their souls. What do they want to do, not just what the economy demands of people to produce and to show up for.
And I really think we've been saying it, when you were talking about, it's that equitable planning. It's making sure that the faces, all of the faces are at the table, okay? No big table, no little table. We're talking about the thing with the unions and all that, and oh my God, 50 unions at least, okay? But to be able to wind up doing just what was talked about here, and have the authenticity of the worker who, quite candidly, if they're in the infrastructure sector, I can tell you in transport in North America, 80% of the positions are unionized. So if you think you're going to do anything tremendous without having organized labor at the table, it's just not happening. Okay, same thing for energy sector, same thing for water sector. But to be able to have the authentic voices of people who are actually the ones who are on the front line, who are the essential workers, who are doing these positions, and talking with the faculty, and talking with the students, and being a part of, and families that get it. Because one of the things we have to do too is that we really, in the United States, we systematically disassembled vocational and technical education over almost a 60-year period of time. As a result, it's gotten a stigma. Blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs. I say, great, everything's great. It's blurred, okay? But we've done this. And then we made the college degree to automatic, all that stuff. So we have a lot of marketing, image, just uplifting of how important what these careers are, what they do, and if you become a part of them, how you are really being able to be a part of building your community for a lifetime, okay? And so I think it's really, we don't need to create something different. We need to work on what the challenge that's been put before us. Make sure that in everything we're doing, that the mix is at the table. And then I'll say this, and that mix is gonna include not just the tech stuff, it's gonna include the wraparound services that are so essential. It's going to include, well, yeah, childcare is an issue. Elder care is too. Talk to the grandmother, okay? Childcare, elder care, transportation. Oftentimes people say the transportation access and affordability is an issue for them in terms of digital divide. If I am going to, if you don't have the services, and in this world of ours now, Lord, if we haven't had it, if we haven't figured it out. All of those are barriers that have nothing to do with my brain as to whether or not I can do it. It's that whole issue of I don't have all the means to do it. So we need to make sure that when we're thinking who needs to be at these tables, that we make those be big tables.
Can raise your hand if you run or are part of a community-based organization. Beautiful. We also have a great opportunity to partner with our community-based organizations who are in community, work directly with populations, and can really support the pipeline work and can do those wraparound services, and there should be funds to expand that. Very often when we're talking about pathways, you know, a kid is at a high school, they're going to a college, but here's everything that's happening in the middle. Here's life. And they need a lot of support to move down that, and we could do much more of that in the Inland Empire. Friends, questions? I think we have like maybe one, maybe two. And we have a microphone over here. Questions, challenges?
Hello, good morning. My name is Connie Stouffer. I'm with the Economic Development Coalition, and I really appreciate your conversations about upskilling people and getting them into the technical jobs that we need to fill. But one thing I don't hear enough about is our low workforce participation rates. A lot of people felt that pinch during the pandemic, but statistics show that labor force participation rates have been declining for over a decade. And that's working age people. That's just not baby boomers retiring. That's working age people who are not in the workforce. And I would really love for us to focus more on how do we get them into the workforce. There's a variety of issues plaguing that, but that's childcare issues, transportation issues, incarcerations, opioid addictions, a whole host of issues that are keeping people out of the workforce. And the statistics, really the reality is we don't have enough people. It might seem like we do on the highway in the morning, but the reality is no matter how much you train people, there's just physically not enough people to put to work. So how do we get the people we do have into the workforce?
Can I talk
James,
to that?
yeah.
So if COVID did one thing, it showed us that we need to be flexible. What hours can you give me? You know, it's not, hey, you're going to work 6 to 2:30. So that used to be our mentality. Hey, the position 6 to 2:30, do you want it or not? Now, after COVID, we were like, okay, what schedule works for you? Can you work part-time? Can you work full-time? Can you work 6 hours a day? You know, because we run a 24-hour operation 5 days a week. If you can give me 4 hours from 2 to 6 p.m. or whatever, we had to become way more flexible to get people into the workforce, and we've had to do that. So I think that's one of the main contributors to get anybody and everybody to work, that we're going to have to be more flexible in the future.
Yeah, in healthcare, we are fortunate to offer jobs that have flexible schedules like that, 12-hour shifts where you work 3 days a week, so that it helps kind of coordinate your childcare with maybe a partner, or if you don't have a partner, you know, there's days that you're not working for majority of the week. And even beyond that, after COVID, similar to what James said, we've looked at different ways. Maybe a 12-hour shift doesn't work, and can we look at something else? Maybe a shorter shift that helps cover lunches for other people that are working at the regular 12-hour shift. And so really that flexibility has been key for us.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing too is, once again, there are a lot of there's so many programs and resources, like you were saying, but there's so many programs and resources that are places, but it's almost like they're hidden in plain sight because you're navigational. How do you do it? Okay, where do you go? You heard somebody say it, a piece of something or whatever. So the more that we can do to be outward, one-stop shopping. You're not trying to be the guru to keep people, but just so that people even know what exists, okay, that's out there. And then being able to really have those informed, know what they're doing, coaches and whatever that say this is almost like a case management kind of thing. And in the whole world of incarceration, don't even get me started, because there's you are absolutely correct, okay? And I'm gonna give you a good example, then I shut up. Dumb and Dumber, okay? So anyway, we have had so many fires and all this kind of stuff like that. So let me tell you what happens. You know, a lot of it has nothing to do with vegetation and all of that kind of stuff. So let's talk with PG&E up in the Bay Area and IBEW. And so they were talking about, well, who do you think wants the first responders and stuff, and they do, who works on it? Prison laborers, prison laborers. Do you know those same, I couldn't believe it when I heard management and labor saying the same thing. Those same prison laborers who are working to do the vegetation, that there's a law that said that for 7 years, if they had committed a felony, had nothing to do with whether it was an egregious felony or whatever, that they would not, in fact, when they got out, be able to wind up getting the same job that they had been doing. It's all kinds of...
I think we fixed it.
Yes, I got
I think we fixed that one.
Okay, so anyway, so it's those kind of things like that
Yay!
that are...
We fixed something.
We fixed something, okay.
But we got to put that at the heart of things, right? These are the questions you have to elevate. They're difficult questions together. We've got to put those at the forefront. Sounds like great work also for our workforce
Michelle, if I
development
could
boards.
just say something about that really quickly. Thank you for your question,
we
Connie.
are absolutely running out of time, though, so I kind of want to have a huddle and not upset my host. Was there a question over here? Ricardo?
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Ricardo Cisneros with the Inland Empire Labor Council. And I'm hearing the discussion from the panel, and it is true. There's things that are missing, right, even in this discussion, which is the labor part of it, which, you know, within labor, every single contract that we have with a partner, with an employer, is a high road training partnership type of contract, which we're building good jobs, we're building sustainable jobs that are not just sustainable for the person, but also for the community. Those discussions need to be had broader in our communities. But then also, we got to look at the data. I'm hearing about data. But we got to look at the data as a whole, not just the labor market data, but then we also got to look beyond and see the retention. Because a lot of the times we have folks within the data stats, they'll come in and they'll get a job, you know, not knocking on Walgreens, at Walgreens, and they'll probably work there for maybe an hour, and then they're out. But in those data reports that we get is we got that person a job, but we don't know for how long. And those are the things that we got to look at if we're going to fix the situation that we have here in the Inland Empire in creating those good jobs. Making those low road jobs into high road jobs, right, is the main question. How is it that we can move those? But then at the same time, really build a partnership within local government, city government, county, right, different groups, community groups, labor, to really sit down and talk about what is it that we really want for this region? Do we want to continue moving forward looking at logistics as being the savior for this region, which we know that's all going to be automated, right, Chris? Yes. It's all going to be automated pretty soon, so we're going to see a huge job loss. What is it that we're going to do to prepare for those job losses? And what is it that we're going to, what type of jobs we're going to create in our region to continue to sustain our economy so we can continue to grow? So those are the type of things that we need to start thinking about. I didn't want to throw a fastball here, right, or a curveball, but these are some of the things that we really need to start focusing on and looking at if we're really going to grow this region and grow it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Folks, I think that's it for our panel. Give us a big round. Thank you all very, very much. Have a great rest of your conference.
Can we have one more round of applause for our panel, please? I love the ambitious energy. I just want to say that we as a region have to think big. A lot that I took from what we just heard is thinking big, thinking different. And I can tell you that outside of the region, people are not thinking big for us. And that is something that is not, it is not a mute point to me. And so I just want to leave that with you as kind of the undertones of what I think I just heard was we all have to think big, we have to think innovatively, and we have to think differently. I cannot wait to see what our other panelists have in store for us later today, later this afternoon. Right now, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Please visit the information tables in the lobby, and we'll start back promptly just in a few minutes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Lloyd, and I have the honor of serving our country as the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education here at the U.S. Department of Education. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. Your summit, focused on growing a future regional workforce for the Inland Empire, is critically important. Thank you to Riverside Community College District Workforce and Economic Development and the County of Riverside for bringing key leaders together today to partner in building the future of the Inland Empire. On behalf of Secretary Cardona and the entire Biden-Harris administration, I want to express our deep appreciation of the work that you lead on behalf of our learners and workers, our employers, our economies, and our communities. Your work is crucial to the success of the Inland Empire, of the great state of California, and of our nation. We find ourselves now at a unique moment in time. This is our moment to lift our students and reimagine our education system so that we advance equity through building a vibrant and inclusive workforce and economy. Why is now our moment? Well, over the past 2 years, we have all already lived through the impossible, through the world as we knew it turning upside down. We shifted to new ways of learning and new ways of working practically overnight. So we've already proven that transformation is possible. And now is our moment to be more deliberate about the transformation we need for our future. So I'm here to urge you all to leverage the disruption from the pandemic as an opportunity for this transformation. Take this moment to consider what education could and should be to meet the diverse needs of our students in business and industry alike. This is your moment to create a bold vision for what you know that your communities need to build a high-wage, thriving, inclusive economy for all people in the Inland Empire, and concrete next steps in how the region can and will reshape how your education, workforce development, and economic development systems need to transform to meet your vision. And know that my team and I are also here to support and advance your vision. Secretary Cardona has charged me to join you in seizing this moment and making the most of it, working in service to you and in partnership with you. Together, we can recover from the pandemic and rebuild a more equitable and stronger education workforce ecosystem. So I'm here today to share some of our administration's priorities that relate to the work you lead. First of all, we are committed to our community colleges. You have some excellent community colleges in the Inland Empire, so you probably don't need me to tell you the many roles they play, but I will anyway. As I think about institutions that are responsive to the changing economic conditions we face and that prepare multiple generations of learners and workers for success, I think about community colleges. We know community colleges are essential drivers of equity and economic and social mobility, fueling the vibrancy and the vitality of our nation's workforce, employers, and communities. And our community colleges, like those in RCCD, are lifelines to opportunity for rural students, students of color, students from low-income backgrounds, students who are juggling work and family beyond school, and any student seeking the skills and credentials that will help them advance and achieve their goals. And they're often at the heart of our communities, serving as a hub across diverse stakeholders in our ecosystems. In other words, we believe that our community colleges are key to addressing our nation's workforce needs because we know post-secondary credentials are the key to success in our economy. That's why we're committed to increasing student access to higher education. We're doing so through many strategies, including a focus on registered apprenticeship in high-growth fields with the lens on equity, partnerships between community colleges and the public workforce development system and employers to design and deliver high-quality workforce training programs, including through sector strategies. And the President's budget makes historic investments in college affordability and completion. To help low and middle-income students overcome financial barriers to post-secondary education, the budget proposes to double the maximum Pell Grant by 2029. This begins with the historic $2,175 increase for the 23-24 school year, expanding access and reaching nearly 6.7 million students. The budget would also support strategies to improve the retention, transfer, and completion rate of students by investing in what works, like the federal TRIO programs, Gear Up programs, and new retention and completion grants. And Universal Community College remains a cornerstone of the administration's agenda to increase access and affordability across our higher education system. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or bill, will create millions of new jobs over the next 5 to 10 years in areas such as construction, broadband, and electrification. We have an immense need for workforce development and training opportunities to meet the need for more highly skilled and qualified workers that bill will create. Bill's investment of $65 billion to close the digital divide will also ensure that all people in our country have access to reliable, high-speed, and affordable broadband, which is essential to our success into the future. And in President Biden's first year in office, the Biden-Harris administration implemented an industrial strategy to revitalize domestic manufacturing and create good-paying jobs that strengthen American supply chains and accelerate the industries of the future. These policies have spurred a historic recovery in manufacturing. We've added 642,000 manufacturing jobs since last year. Last month, the president signed into law the Bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act of 2022, which will build on this progress. CHIPS is designed to strengthen American manufacturing, supply chains, and national security. The bill catalyzes regional economic growth and development, creating regional partnerships to develop technology, innovation, and manufacturing sectors. Workforce development is going to play a critical role in this work, and we know that education is the springboard to workforce development. So CHIPS will prioritize workforce solutions that enable employers, training providers, workforce development organizations, labor unions, and other key stakeholders to work together, much like all of you are doing today. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention how important career and college pathways are for talent pipeline development. We are committed to expanding high-quality, career-connected education at scale, and we need your help to do this right. Secretary Cardona and I share the vision that every student will be on a career pathway in high school that includes leaving high school with college credits, experience in the workplace, an industry credential they can use, and a plan to achieve their career ambitions. To that end, we've proposed a new $200 million grant proposal in the President's FY23 budget for a career-connected high school program. This program is designed to better connect our high schools with our community colleges and with business and industry. It will allow us to reimagine the high school experience to accelerate momentum to and through a post-secondary credential of value that allows young people to launch rewarding careers. So I could go on and on about the many exciting facets of our work at the department and here in our administration. I'll leave it at this for now. I want to say that what you are doing today at this summit matters. The engagement and the commitment from leaders like yourselves and others across our country gives me immense hope. I'm excited to hear about your next steps as you seek to strengthen the Inland Empire's future through powerful education and workforce development. I'm so grateful for your leadership in this important work. Thank you once again, and I hope you have a wonderful summit.
As we find our seats and start to transition into the second panel, which is diversifying the economy through innovation and entrepreneurship, please take a second to look at your phones and put them on vibrate or silent if you can. Okay. Join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Stoll to the stage from Cal State San Bernardino. Dr. Michael Stoll. Thank you. Dr. Michael Stoll is the director of the Inland Empire Center for Entrepreneurship.
All right, good morning, everybody. Let's go. Are we ready? Woo! All right. Okay. We're going to have a panel that's going to talk about diversifying the economy through innovation and entrepreneurship. So as people make their way, I see people are networking. That's great. It's been so long since we've all been together, right? Yes. All right. So I have a group of panelists that I would like to invite to come on up here. So everybody kind of make your way up. I know we're coming out of the break, so everybody's get that networking going. As was said, I'm the director of the Inland Empire Center for Entrepreneurship at Cal State San Bernardino, which is the region's largest provider of entrepreneurial support programs. I also have the privilege of serving as the director of the School of Entrepreneurship at Cal State San Bernardino, the first and only school of entrepreneurship in California, and a provider of talent, entrepreneurial talent to the region, so a pipeline for future entrepreneurship. And this is my favorite subject. I've been associated with entrepreneurship since I was 5 years old. No, I did not start a business at 5. My parents did. I watched the impact that that had on their lives and my family's life in terms of the power and what I often think of as economic empowerment being synonymous with entrepreneurship. And so it's been a passion of mine since that period of time, and have been associated with and been an entrepreneur my entire, from 5 on, and now have the privilege of being a part of an organization at Cal State San Bernardino, 2 organizations that the primary focus is to promote and support entrepreneurship and be a part of enhancing the economic fabric and the community fabric of the region. And so we have incredible panelists today. And instead of me introducing them, I'm going to have them introduce themselves and tell you briefly a little bit about who they are and what they do and why they do it. And then we're going to transition right into the meat of the matter, which is hearing about why entrepreneurship is important, what is the impact of innovation, and how we as a region need to embrace and evolve and progress and become an economic powerhouse driven by entrepreneurship and innovation. So I will start at the very end. We'll have them progress this way, and then we'll get to it.
Hi there, my name's Adam Martin. I'm the CEO and president of Quadro Council, which is a legal tech startup here in the Inland Empire. Founded the company in 2015, currently scaling and considering private equity investment right now. In addition to my role as the senior leader of that business, I also serve as a full-time faculty member at RivCo College, teaching business administration and entrepreneurship.
Awesome. Yeah, give it up. Let's go. A little energy. Let's go.
Good morning. My name is Stacy Cumberbatch. I'm the Managing Director of Blended Impact. We're an innovation lab based here in downtown Riverside, and we work with local government on added capacity for economic development. For the past 2 years, we've been specifically working on opportunity zones alongside our city and local government. So this varies in the work that we do, whether it be reporting, added capacity for specific programs that we run for them, advocacy, and the work that I'll share on the panel as well.
Excellent.
Good morning. My name is James Spee. I'm a professor at University of Redlands and a volunteer with a community-based organization called 1IE. We support startup founders. My dad also started a business when I was 5 years old. He mortgaged our house, which he had built, and bought a helicopter. And when he couldn't sell enough rides at the local ski resort in the summertime, because there weren't any skiers, he pivoted and rented a weenie shack. So I remember serving hot dogs and spilling a milkshake all over a customer when I was like 5, which probably kept me out of the food service business. But I'm really glad to be here, and I want to fill up Mike's program so there's some students to come over to things I want to do at Redlands.
Excellent. And Jim, just to complete the weird coincidence, my parents started an aviation company.
They did too, okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in aviation. None of us will ever see it. That was our motto.
All right, and last but not least, Dr. Ochoa.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Rosibel Ochoa. I am the Associate Vice Chancellor for Technology Partnerships at the University of California in Riverside. I report to the Vice Chancellor for Research and Economic Development. And for the last 6 years, this is my 3rd innovation ecosystem in which I've been involved. And for the last 6 years, I've been at the Inland Empire building an innovation ecosystem focused on technology entrepreneurship. And part of my job is really to leverage the infrastructure, the talent, and the expertise that our faculty has and our research have in order to bring that innovation to the marketplace. So in the last 6 years, we have worked with over 600 entrepreneurs from 40% from the university, 60% from the community, providing them access to capital and training, incubation space. And we are now focused, which is relevant to this panel today, in accelerating technology insertion into small businesses, and also on preparing an entrepreneurial, technical skill workforce that is going to be needed for the industries of the future.
Excellent. All right, round of applause for an incredibly, as you can see, we have an incredibly diverse panel in terms of experience, background, and focus, and so I'm excited to hear what they have to say. We have some questions prepared, and I know you guys are all ready. Are you guys ready? Yes, all right, I love it. And then I might throw a curveball in there, too. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So first question that we wanted to kind of tackle is really how can innovation and entrepreneurship help diversify the economy in this region, creating good quality jobs? Who wants to take that first? Rosabelle?
Okay. I don't like to be always first, but that's okay. So I think that, and I will go back to thinking about what I do at the university. We think, when we look at the nationwide, 50% of the new businesses are created by this, what we call a scalable, high growth, innovation-based companies. And those are companies that really leverage technology, and technology is everywhere. In everything we do now, it's actually changed the way we live and work. So when we're thinking about innovation and entrepreneurship, and we put it in a, more like, what does it take? It means, from my perspective, in making available a lot of the new discoveries and the new inventions that are created in our labs, in our universities, or our talented people, and making it available as fast as possible to the general public, to the greater community, rather than keep it in the lab or to the very few, the PhDs and the scientists. So, but that takes some process, and it takes infrastructure. So for the Inland Empire, and we can talk some more about that, we need not only the training, we need the most important thing, capital. Only entrepreneurs of color only receive less than 2% of the venture capital. So we cannot create an inclusive entrepreneurship ecosystem if we don't have the capital to invest locally. And that's kind of what also Steve Kay is saying in his Right of the Rest book that he just published. So capital is paramount, talent, and test beds and infrastructure where you can actually play and grow and connect.
Rosabelle, before I have I'm sure other panelists will like to weigh in on this, I want to ask a brief follow-up question of you, specifically based on something you just said, which is there's an incredible amount of intellectual property, innovative technology and research being done in the region. UCR is a great example of quite a bit of that, and making that available. And part of the challenge, I think, of higher education is we don't have a lot of entrepreneurs that are researchers, but this incredible innovation is available. How do we bridge that gap, making that available? How do we get that to happen?
Okay, so we have a program called EPIC, Entrepreneurial Proof of Concept and Innovation Center. And it's really a continuum that brings, and researchers, faculty are not very good entrepreneurs, by the way. They're actually not.
I concur. There's a few of us.
A few, but not much, not the majority. So what we need to do, and I will say that in the universities, or in universities, there's many challenges that need to be addressed when you actually try to translate innovation or discoveries into a company. Number one, the technology is not proven. Sometimes you can actually test it in a Petri dish, and then you say, oh, this is a great manufacturing company. There's nowhere close. It's years and years of development and investment. Second, so the technology is not validated, so you need to put money into the validation. Second, yes, the faculty is not entrepreneurs, but what about the students? the grad students, the undergrads, the postdocs, the community. So, but they are not going to come in and take a petri dish and all of a sudden there's a company. You need to provide them with the skills and the training and the support, the mentorship that they need to actually go through that process. The third part is that there's no capital, and I'm not talking now just investment capital. At UCR, we have something that is called a proof of concept fund. And we actually start with very little money, start with $500 to do something, market research, $20,000 to do prototype, then $100,000 to actually build a company, and then you take it to capital. So there's a whole infrastructure that is needed in order to get there, and it takes time and it takes resources. So that's why Empire is difficult, and sometimes people just complain that, oh, tech transfer offices are hard to work with. It's not that alone. It's really all that it requires to actually take technologies, early stage technologies that are patented or patentable, that are deep tech, that will be transformational, that will turn into a scalable company.
I'm going to jump in and I'm going to answer your question, Mike, and then I'm going to touch on 3 things and echo what Rosabelle said in different ways. The first is I'm already seeing that entrepreneurship is diversifying the economy. And that's largely credited to a lot of the work that the universities have been doing, right? I had a chance to do a report for the second time this year in partnership with the Center for Social Innovation, and it was on the innovation ecosystem. What we found is there's now more firms that are in the Inland Empire that are showing that they're raising capital at the seed stage and pre-seed level, for example, in new economies that are diversifying our industry. So for example, the work that is happening at UCR in the biotech and the agritech industry, that's starting to show up on the leaderboards in terms of where new companies are growing. And I really wanted to underscore that because sometimes, you say small businesses and 99% of businesses are small businesses, right? So you start to lump in small businesses in terms of everything from Main Street to your startup company to, the companies that are well established that simply are not government or, in the Fortune 500 or whatnot, and you call that a small business, and folks just think, oh, it's a small business. It may not get the attention that it deserves, but we're already seeing that the businesses that are being incubated in our universities and at our accelerators are starting to get that same type of financial investment that is needed to help them grow. And why that financial investment is important is because it also shows that the capital immediately translates to job growth. Right? Anytime a business takes in capital, there are studies that shows that businesses that raise funding, they can hire at 8 times the rate as a regular business. So for example, if a business is able to raise, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million from a venture capital investor, well, now they have $1 million on their books that they can now go and hire for good paying jobs that we all want to see. So that capital becomes very important in terms of can our businesses raise funding here in this region. Last year we were part of a initiative. You may have heard that there was SSBCI funding that was coming down for small businesses, at the federal and the state levels. Over a year and a half ago, we started the process of advocating at the state level for a state venture capital fund that would focus on emerging regions and emerging founders and emerging managers, because we saw that same lack of capital that Rosabelle is speaking to in the ecosystem. We have a great, venture capital program at UCR. We have, some infrastructure in place there, but when we look at the rest of the ecosystem in the Inland Empire, for example, we have 4 CDFIs. They're focused on residential, residential lending. So where's the rest of the ecosystem for business investments? And where is the continuity of capital, for example? How does it grow from beyond just, 100,000 to 500,000, a million, et cetera, to really grow this company and keep it in the region? So I wanted to underscore that because that's what's going to be important in keeping our businesses here that we are incubating and we want to see, keep our jobs here. So I'll pause there.
Excellent. Wow. Stacey always blows me away. I'm really interested at the bottom of the pyramid part of this. And my first job out of college was in agricultural development in Asia, and I was selling $100 wells to families whose net worth was $50. And I took a workshop on entrepreneurial education over 10 years ago, and the person who did that is now at Notre Dame, and he's got an initiative about poverty alleviation through entrepreneurship. And what their research has shown, and I think what you're doing backs this up, is that if you don't have a career and technical education background and you try to start a business, you're going to be a commodity. And I've got an example. One of my students was helping her mom as a consulting project. They wanted to expand her kettle corn business. She was at 1 or 2 swap meets. Well, swap meets only want 1 kettle corn, and if they've already got one, they aren't taking another one. And the packaged kettle corn business is already, that pipeline's full. So there's a mom stuck in a commodity. And I think we've got people doing side hustles all over region. And I was telling someone I just met, I was up at the Pal Academy in Muscoy, and State Street in Muscoy had 15 pop-up restaurants the first week of COVID. All of them illegal, none of them passed by the health department. Health department came in 2 weeks later and shut them all down. Well, those are all our entrepreneurs. They're out there. They're in our neighborhoods. They're in our what we consider our underserved neighborhoods, but they're not banked. And one student I'm teaching right now, she works at Wells Fargo. She's got 10 people a day coming in cashing checks who don't have bank accounts, probably because they don't have a social security number, but there's ways around that. So I'm really interested. I think the way we can help diversify, if we can help families get those businesses legit, they're going to make enough money that their kids can can go to UCR and finish a degree, and maybe they're the ones that lift that whole company up. So I'm excited about creating this infrastructure, but I think the inclusive part that we've been talking about earlier this morning really hits me hard. I was really lucky. My parents had college degrees. My mom had some family wealth that got us through college, but our family business went under. My father had a traumatic brain injury. And so I'm also very sensitive to the families that have lost members or lost capacity because of now mental illness and physical illness is hitting our communities super hard, and they're hitting youth really hard. And I think those are places where they need options, and having your own business allows you to set your own hours, and I appreciate that Walgreens is giving that flexibility. But that's the other piece of this for me. For people that are divergent, they need other solutions, and entrepreneurship can get them into the workforce instead of being dependent on necessarily always being on disability or something else. So let's redefine them as able and put them to work. That's where my heart really is right now.
James, I'm sorry, but I just want to make a clarification that the programs that I'm talking about that are about technology and innovation is not directed to people in universities alone.
Yeah.
It's really, in fact, one of the programs that we have is actually focused on building technical skills for people that are non-technical. You don't need to have a PhD or a 4-year college to start a business, but you have to think about how technology enabled you need to be. COVID told us that small businesses that did not have access to the marketplace or don't have data analytics had a hard time accessing their customers. So you need to do that. And that's why, I want to clarify, this is for everybody, but it's this lens of technology and innovation across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a business without technology. It may be a different level.
And getting back to the inclusive part as well, it's important that we keep the conversations going and in diverse parts of the ecosystem, because earlier this week, for example, I had a chance to teach a class with AMPAC, Introduction to Alternative Capital. So if you are not seeking loans for your business, for example, what are the options to finance your business? And one of the comments after was, a woman said, "Oh, I thought venture capital was just for boys who code." Now, that's a shame. I mean, that's a stereotype that's not of the Inland Empire, but it is a stereotype that we're going to have to combat to make sure that people know that they have access to this capital for the innovations, for example, that is coming out of the lab. I had a conversation to say, okay, well, if you have to pivot from this business and you find that your assumptions were wrong and you need to do something else, what are your options? How are you thinking about, what to transition into? Because you clearly have an entrepreneurial spirit. So are you considering, looking at the work that comes out of the lab because it's already researched and now you can go and commercialize that and find funding for it? It wasn't a thought. right? So just being able to push that message out there and let them know that that is, available, for use, for example, and continue to push that message and create these pathways in is going to be important when we're thinking about not only, for example, the city of Riverside where we're at, but as we get into the Coachella Valleys, as we get into, Southwest Riverside, into the diverse ecosystems where we want to utilize all of our talent.
I heard a couple of things come out, and I want to come to Adam back again. Roosevelt talked about, creating scalable, growth-oriented enterprises. I heard about the lack of representation among venture capital, and you just reinforced that. And we put that in the context, as Stacy knows, we did a State of Entrepreneurship report in 2021, and we're currently working on the 2022 report. And we looked at the trends that are taking place in terms of new venture creation in the region, and we compared it against national and state trends. And one thing that came out clear is this region is, in many cases, is outpacing both state and national trends when it comes to entrepreneurial ventures. Where we're lacking is in what we call opportunity entrepreneurship. We're high in what's called necessity entrepreneurship, measured by people that don't have a job that create a business, versus people that are partially or fully employed that go and create a business because they sense an opportunity. And generally those opportunity entrepreneurship events tend to be more growth and scale, innovative growth, scalable. They're solving a problem. And so we lack that in the region. Also, the driver of new venture creation in this region right now is minority-owned businesses. So I want to pivot to a quick question, which is, what supports do we need for entrepreneurs, in particular for entrepreneurs from underserved communities?
So I'll start with that one. And I want to say I really appreciate the wisdom of the panel, because I think in listening to your responses to the first question, I was able to see that structurally an ecosystem needs to exist. And also at the beginning of the funnel, empowerment needs to exist. And I think that's an often overlooked part of the problem, because we can build systems, we can have meetings, we can get people together, but it's hard to inspire those people to turn that side hustle that you talked about into their full-time job. Yep. And then to build on that experience and maybe take on a business that isn't need-based but is more opportunity-based. And I think that's really the power of entrepreneurship, is through education, empowerment can be created, and entrepreneurship has that power to create new land in the economy. What I mean by that is that through problem solving and through radical accountability that entrepreneurs take on, they have the ability to create hope by alleviating this notion of deficit thinking, right? We spend most of our lives thinking about how we don't have enough of things as individuals, as communities, as countries. And when entrepreneurs are properly empowered, they don't think that way, right? They think about possibility, they think about hope, they think about what could be. And so I think the way that entrepreneurship changes the economy is that innovation can create a pathway for commercialization, and commercialization creates positive economic impact and job growth. So what do we need to make this happen? I know that's somewhat philosophical, but what we need is the ability to let founders know that their ideas have worth, that something that they think they can solve is a worthy challenge that they can dedicate their time and their effort and their money to. So entrepreneurship is a self-nurturing act, but it can be supported by a community. And honestly, a lot of the other things that we build in terms of system are a byproduct of that empowerment and of that hope. Without that, it doesn't matter how great the venture community is in the region, because there's nothing to talk about at those meetings. So it's not a concrete runway. I can't say step 1, 2, and 3 is this for you, but I can say that I believe, which is why I've dedicated the second portion of my career to joining the educational system and helping others come through the way that I did, is to provide hope and empower that hope through education.
So in terms of excellent insight, what do we need to do more of? What supports do we need for entrepreneurs in general, but in particular for minority and women entrepreneurs?
Can I talk about that?
Absolutely, please.
I'll follow you.
So I just want to, what I'm going to say is based on our experience of working with over 7,000 students, undergrads, all want to be entrepreneurs, over 300 entrepreneurs that have gone through a program that we call, it's funded by the National Science Foundation called ICOR. It's actually nationwide. We done 2 sites, one in San Diego and one here. Number one, in the beginning, primarily, the ones that, and by the way, this is a well-documented program that is quite successful in the translation of ideas into companies because it's really focused on the customer and what does it take to sell, to find a customer so you can build a business. So it's very simple. So then, in the beginning, 5-6 years ago, when we started, 20 of the students or the participants in the program were male, and they were for engineering. And this last cohort that we finished, that now the program is finished, we had the majority were entrepreneurs of color from non-engineering background, which for me was an awesome success, right? And it took a lot of effort. So number one, I'll tell you what I learned from this process. Number one, language matters. So you cannot have somebody coming to tell, a venture capital come to a group of women and, people of color, a diverse group saying, hey guys, because immediately that turned them off. So we had to deal with that. So language mattered, and also this idea that, only the good ideas receive venture capital. That's not true either, right? Because in fact, venture funds really almost invest, not invest. We have a venture fund in the Inland Empire. I brought it. It's very difficult to convince these venture capitalists to invest in our ventures. So the idea that the venture fund, that the way that we think of venture funding as in Silicon Valley is not going to work here in the Inland Empire. The third part is that you need to, if you have talent, we may have lots of resources, but it doesn't matter if you don't expose the resources, you don't get to the people that we can reach, right? So we need to expose them not only to the programs, but also to these edge technologies, to what is possible. We need to actually do skills training in the right careers. And also we need to not think about just the CEOs and the entrepreneurs, but also the workers, the skills, the support staff, the CEOs. Finally, we need to really think about, I'm going to go back because to me it's the biggest thing, which is I have tons of ideas, I don't have enough capital, local capital to actually fund them and de-risk them. And so capital, we have to sort that out actually in our community if we want to really shift the needle, because there's a lot of ideas that are not going to be funded unless we actually do something about it.
Yeah, I want to reinforce that. I went to some ICOR events and I met some of your entrepreneurs in residence, and one of them came over to help me, so I stole him from you. But what we've been learning from him was the mistake I was using in my design classes was I was skipping over the part where you find out if anybody really wants this. And so I had gone through 10 different possible customers for an idea I had, and we never found one that would say they wanted it without prompting. And there's a book called The Mom Test, and the mom test is if you tell your mom what your business idea is, what's she gonna say? Oh, honey, that's great. I know somebody who wants that. That means mom's never gonna buy it. And so you hear that over and over again. So that's what I've been really focusing my attention on, is building that skill and helping us become better listeners. And faculty are not good listeners, unfortunately, but when you let them tell their story and become empathetic, and you wait for them to tell you if they have the problem or not, different things happen. And then you start to see patterns. And there's actually a professor at Babson, she's written a simulation to teach you how to do this. And I did it the other day, and I finally passed. It took me like 4 tries. But it involves letting people tell you their story. And if they bring up the issue that you're trying to solve for, then you know it's a real problem. And if they don't, it isn't. And if you talk to enough people, and that's what's great about ICOR, it's 100 people, right? That's the magic number.
100 in 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks, that's really hard. I can't get them to 10 in 8 weeks. But 106 weeks, by the end, everybody you talk to should be in your demographic and bring up the problem without you telling, because then you can go back to that demographic and test your prototype and know that they care. If they're not looking for it, and there's a bunch of writing on this, if they're not looking for it, it doesn't matter how good your website is, they're never gonna type the search term in to look for you. And I think that's the problem with technology chasing a customer. But when customers are chasing for a solution and you hand it to them, best example I had, and Mike, you've probably heard this too, is somebody was starting a business to run parties at kids' houses, and the moms in the group all wanted to know, it's like, I will write you a check right now. That's what you want to get to.
Yeah. But as Rosabelle said earlier, language matters. So Jim, you didn't steal that entrepreneur residence, you borrowed them.
Yes, they're on loan.
For your project.
That's right.
So,
and I sent you back a student in return.
Oh, by the way, we need hundreds of mentors.
We need more of those.
We need
Yes.
hundreds
Yes.
of advisors and volunteers who can help
Right.
with all this talent. So, more than welcome to have.
Stacy was just about to give us the nugget on how we can better support minority entrepreneurs.
No, I'm going to agree with everything Rosabelle said, and then I'm going to add two things as well. I really would love to see, more continuity of our programming, for example, because we have great entrepreneur support programs in this region. I would love to see it go across a continuity of helping that business actually grow. Not just at the earliest stages, not just at the idea stage, for example, but as it grows in the different stages, so it can get to be that large-scale business that we want to see, be retained here and raise capital to an extent. Last year, for example, we launched an initiative with the City of Coachella to do their very first opportunity, their very first entrepreneurship initiative. So we put out, tons of press, we engaged different partners, we had cash prizes, and we said, if you want to grow your business or start your business in the city of Coachella, this is the time period where we're calling for entrepreneurship. We had the mayor on TV, it was a big rollout. We had about only $15,000 to allocate to that, but we had about 2,000 eyeballs on it, and we had 6 businesses that were highly vetted that said, hey, we want to relocate here or grow in this region. We were able to award them, those prize dollars, and the city worked with them over a period of months to help integrate them into what needed to be done. But a business can't grow on $15,000 alone, right? So where is the rest of that funding or support going to be to help them really anchor into that community and get their foothold? So this also comes back to the portion of how do we create, different pools of capital in different geographies. We have been seeing really good success with crowdfunding platforms, for example. I know a number of cities have engaged with it, and entrepreneurs have been taking it up on their own, and they're raising for things that are outside of tech, and they're raising in areas that are outside of our major cities, right? They're raising in Apple Valley, they're raising in Chino, they're raising in, so they're already catching on in terms of how to attract capital on their own when they have an idea that they want to run with. How do we make that more widely available in different ecosystems and across a continuity of helping that business grow? So that's the only two things that I would add to everything that was already said.
That's excellent. I want to pick up on something both Rosabelle and Jim said. And Jim in particular talked about what we call the customer discovery process in entrepreneurship. And I think one of the things that we haven't done well enough in the region, I think we're getting better at it, and we're trying to do this as well, and I'll give a couple of examples, is practice what we preach in how we design and deliver and serve the community. Because oftentimes we package up, deliver what we think are great ideas, but they're not really meeting the need. And that's one of the reasons why we did the State of Entrepreneurship report, is like we wanted to know what entrepreneurs were facing and what they were feeling, in particular minority entrepreneurs, so that we could provide support programs. And our center rolled out 2 new programs this year specifically from that feedback we got from minority entrepreneurs. So I think it's important that we sort of practice what we preach in terms of helping the community, because like I said, we all have great ideas, but are those great ideas going to have an impact in the community? Do they really meet the need?
Well, I want to echo what Stacy's saying about capital. I just reminded me, I got the records on an airplane I bought from my dad when he went out of business, and his company owed the bank where Bill Gates' dad worked money. So I could have been the most brilliant computer scientist, and I took programming in high school in 1975. We had to share the computer. I could have gone to Bill Gates' dad's bank and said, I got a great idea for something called MS-DOS. Will you fund me? And he'd go, well, yeah, but your dad owes me money. I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. I was from the wrong side of town. I wasn't from Bellevue. I didn't have all those contacts. And I think that also gives me a heart for how do we find people, bring them into that ecosystem effectively, help them pitch and make sense, but also have them so confident that their idea is valid. They've already done all the pivoting. They've got it nailed, and they've got 500 customers lined up ready to buy. Let's go. I think if my dad had had that much confidence, turned out he was in a little different business, but that's a different story. But I think that combination of validation, confidence building, and overcoming that risk. And I think because my dad's business failed, it made me more risk averse. Half my family are entrepreneurs, the other half of us went into very secure jobs. And I think that's the other piece of, if you're scared, you're not going to make that move. Oh, it's too dangerous. I might lose what little I have, as opposed to, wow, this is such a great opportunity. I'm so excited. Come along with us. We're going whether you're coming or not.
I'm gonna pivot here because we got one particularly salient question that will resonate with this audience that we want to get your feedback on as our last major question. And then I want to turn it over, if we have about 5 to 7 minutes, I want to turn it over to the audience to ask the panel questions. The question here is, how can workforce preparation strengthen entrepreneurship? Adam?
Workforce prep is absolutely essential. So many of the young people that come to work at my companies don't really understand the role of work. And I think that's a failing on our part, because whether it's career readiness skills, whether it's the soft skills that we talked about in the first panel, actual experience through apprenticeship and internship, we need to prepare them in ways that go beyond curriculum, go beyond what can be learned in a book. Because honestly, that's the knowledge of where we've been. That's not the knowledge of where we're going. And so I think career readiness, when done right, is forward-looking and addresses the problem in a way that embodies the entrepreneurial mindset, uses growth thinking, takes the best practices of design that we talked about in our previous responses, and puts them in the hands of the people that actually need to go join the workforce and do it, whether as founders or employees in the knowledge economy itself.
Can I add to the question, and thank you for your comments. So by the way, I just wanted to comment on the previous one that we're talking about, inclusive entrepreneurship. We need to start at high school. And expose our kids to what's possible. And I think that Alex Avila, that is here, partner in crime, is actually helping us build that mindset of how do we actually go and prepare a program for high schoolers that really starts preparing them to this career entrepreneurship. So talk to Alex, he's wonderful. And so here also Cheryl and Britt, who are in the back working with high school, San Andreas High School and AgTech, and you have that in the brochure in your table. I mean, they're already doing great things. So I'll just give you so going to this question and talking about workforce prep. So I'll give you 2 examples. I have a biotech company in our incubator that we were very lucky to attract. And now she's a female entrepreneur. She's raising $2 million in capital. And there's a lot of lab incubators in the coast. There is in San Diego, there is in Irvine, there is in LA. And now she's growing, she's raising capital, she's very happy here, but what? She needs scientists, she needs business developers, and she needs laboratory technicians for a very particular skill set, technology that she developed. And that's kind of like her competitive advantage. She's having a hard time recruiting the talent. So now she's saying, well, and now the price point is so high that I cannot afford it. So now it's like, okay, so do I stay here in Riverside, which what we want, or should I move to San Diego? And by the way, I have another company that moved to San Diego, one of ours, because of the same issue. Another one, autonomous vehicle navigation, SBIR funded, coming out of the lab are grants. Hard time finding the right talent. So we need to think, not only it's like we launch them, and their launch, we put a lot of effort into getting there, and they pitch, they have customers, and then it's like, what is the next one? So we need to really think holistically in terms of skill set. C-level talent, which we have, so glad that you have the school of entrepreneurship, taking care of that part, but also the skills, the technical skills at all levels, not the scientists, which we need, but also the technical, the people that are going to be in the lab doing CRISPR modifications, or they're going to do in vitro clonal propagation. They need to do these things, and they need to do it, and they're going to get great jobs, and they need to be working on these companies. But we need to think about the whole ecosystem, not just one piece.
It's, in some ways, it implies a whole other level of coordination, collaboration, communication among all the partners in the ecosystem to be able to understand where the region's heading, where the startups are heading, what the technologies are they're developing, and what those skill sets that are needed, creating that pipeline. So in some ways, because we have all the assets in the region, I think one of the challenges we have is we're not always synchronized and we're not always communicating, and we probably need to do a better job of that. But I think that, Roosevelt, you hit the nail on the head. We have these wonderful startups that have incredible potential to grow and scale, but they lack the workforce to get there. And subsequently, they will follow, because they want to survive, they will follow, they will go to where the workforce is and where the capital is as well.
Yes.
So maybe one more to weigh in on this topic, and then we'll shift it over to the audience and see if they have a awesome question for you guys.
I got a free book at a Holocaust event last spring, and I've been reading everything I can get my hands on by Primo Levi. Has anybody heard of Primo Levi? It's not well known, but he survived Auschwitz because he was a chemist, and he spoke a little bit of German. So he could understand what they were yelling at him. And he was a slave laborer in a plant that was going to make synthetic rubber. It never produced anything, and then he survived because he got sick at the right moment, and the Russians came and liberated him. But the value of knowledge in an oppressive situation, he wrote a lot about what work is, and the difference between working for a salary and working as a slave. And so when you think about jobs that just oppress you, without air conditioning, with no pathway up, with below a survivable wage, the difference between that and working in a German prison camp, not that different, I'm afraid. Yeah, you take some money home, but I think what we're talking about is liberating our population to their total potential of who they can be. Now, he went on to a very successful career in paint. He actually came to California when I was here, and I missed him, but it was in 1985. But I think I look at people like that, and I think our prison, you mentioned prison labor, Dr. Scott, I think, mentioned that, getting them out of prison and into good jobs, getting people who've had felonies on their books, getting them, changing the laws so they can get certified to own their own business. Those are things that are social justice is embedded in this. And so we need our electeds, we need that support in Sacramento and in our local government too, to recognize where those barriers are, where we need to get out of our own way and then have the capital and the skills. And I think that's what motivates me and the rest of us to really make that happen. Back to you, Mike.
Excellent. Okay. I see Alex is right on top of it. I love that. So the microphone's coming your way.
It's nice to see Alex live. I've seen you on so many Zoom calls.
A lot of Zoom.
What's cracking, Jay? It's good to see you live, too. So, first of all, your panel, for me, is very important because we're talking about the future. Yeah. So, to put it in context, there's a demographic of black and brown babies who would never have access to what you're talking about. And this is the context of where I'm coming from this question. And it's not even a question, it's a challenge. Because you said some fly stuff, as we say in New York, that fly talk, cool phrases, amazing things that I want to actually challenge today in real time, live. So here's my question. And for those who work in academia, you know what I'm talking about. If you see a black student in your class, especially at a CSU or USC, that might be 1 in maybe years or whatever out of 30 or 40 or 100 students that you teach. So what I'm talking about is I'm talking about real access to opportunity, right? How do we get those people real access to opportunities? So here's my challenge. I got a school right now, an elementary school, who I just talked to literally before I got here. And I was talking about this conference. And you know what came out the conversation? Well, those people usually all talk. And I said, you know what? I wonder if that's true. So now Roosevelt, because she's been reaching out, and we're working with Roosevelt and also Deborah. Shout out to that team. Shout out to UCR. So they actually reached out to us, and we are forming a partnership. So excluding Roosevelt and excluding Deborah and her team. Mike, this is for you. Jake, this is for you. I forgot your name, but don't worry, we're going to figure it out. What's his name?
That's Adam.
Huh?
Adam.
Adam. All right, Adam. Okay. This question is for you. Are you willing to partner with Savant Prep Elementary School, help with the curriculum on business, because they're open to it, check out the facility 3 times, at least by the end the whole school year, right? And not use it as a prop, but a real negotiation and a real partnership where we can track these students to actually have access, not to just innovation, but to college and other opportunities. And I'll put that challenge right now, live, because they're ready to go. And we can set the meeting up in 3 weeks. Real people, real location, and they don't have to come to the fancy schools. I want you to come to the hood. I want you to come meet them at their location. Are you willing to take this challenge?
Yes. Sure. And we already do some of that. We have at middle school, we have the minority mail makers, and we do the STEM and the entrepreneurship. We work with local high schools, so if you've got a school we can work with, count me in.
Let's do it. Elementary Savant Prep, let's do a follow-up in 3 weeks with the principal. Let's get ready to rock and roll. Ready? All right. And let's follow up next year and do a report. Where's that going? Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's rock and roll.
So we actually, my nonprofit involvement with 1IE, we worked with a school in the Alvord district, and they did customer discovery around lemonade. And then they went to we sponsored a car show at Tyler Mall. They sold $1,000 worth of lemonade in about 3 hours. So we know this can work with kids in that age group. And the idea was then get them excited about it, get them thinking this way in elementary school. That's the pipeline. Yeah. They don't suddenly decide to do this. Now, our parents both started these businesses when we're 5.
Yeah.
So we can start talking to them when they're 5, 6, 7. In middle school, they can develop it to a higher level. And by the time they get to high school, they may already have 3 side hustles running. That'll be great. Then they come to us in college, and they're ready to rock and roll. Then they want to go talk, and they've already got the business up and running. And maybe they pivot to something more technical because as their skills build. But absolutely, let's start them as early as we can.
Part of the challenge we have, I think, just kind of at the lower levels of education is we're not training students to be entrepreneurs. We're not exposing them to what's possible. And I think that has to change. That's one of the reasons why we've been working with high schools and middle schools to try and start that conversation and change the narrative about what's possible, because you have a lot of pathways, but you don't have a lot of entrepreneurial pathways. And it's a legitimate career. And to me, as I saw with my family, my dad was a migrant farm worker. It changed growing up. It changed their pathway.
And I want to put this in context. School has been damaging to black and brown babies. They don't go there to dream. They go there to become workers, right? They don't go there to be entrepreneurs. They're taught to behave, not to learn. So I just want to put that in context, that school has done a lot of damage, and the business and government has done a lot of damage to these black and brown babies. So we have a distrust with institutions and governments for valid reasons. So I want to put that in context because it's not the same playing field. So I just want to put that out there.
Can I just add to what Alex said? And by the way, I want to really recognize and appreciate what Deborah Mustaine from RCCD has done, because another partner in crime in terms of building all this continuum. If we want to do scale, I mean, we run programs, right? We raise money to run a program. And there's a lot of goodwill, but if we really want to move the needle, and we're talking about thousands, this has to become institutionalized. It's almost like it has to be done it's a commitment at the institutional level that we're going to do that and we're going to integrate.
Has to be part of the culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there may be an untapped resource that we can go to. Oh, we got one more minute. Many of your CTE teachers already have businesses. They already have a business mindset. And it turns out that in the state of California, they can be certified to teach entrepreneurship because it's also a CTE subject. Business, you need an MBA in the community colleges. If they can teach it in the community college, they can teach it as a concurrent enrollment or a dual enrollment class, which means we can have a pipeline in from high school. So it's like we're sitting on top of a resource base. It's like a big oil well full of knowledge and experience. And I was at an academy, a charter school, this one in Muscoy. Their media teacher runs a studio. He knows how to do this. And so it's like, man, let's get that talent and have them start feeding that in, and we can do this. The resources are here. We just got to unwrap that package and make it happen.
Deb, do we have time for one more question? One quick question. Does anybody have a quick question?
She's been back there with her hand up for a long time.
There we go, right there.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tracy. I'm with OCS Construction. And my question for the panel, when it comes to innovation, I know everybody loves tech, right? But construction is a really good place to be. And entrepreneurship in construction is a really great place to be. So my question is, how do we in the region actually take advantage of real-time opportunistic plays? Okay? So if you think about what we've heard about infrastructure spending, right? That money's going to be spent over the next, from today for the next 3 to 4 years, right? All of the minorities and diverse players that are in that space, in real time, we need to grow their businesses. How do we do that? How do we identify people that are in those labor forces right now that have an interest in owning their own, and then position them to have a business that's viable in a window where there's actually revenue available? Right now, with all of the federal money on the street and the state money on the street and the ports have money and the school districts have money, construction's a great place. Opportunistic plays, because they need diverse involvement. How do we find those people, get them into the system, get them through the entrepreneurship training so that they know how to run their business, how to manage their project results and that type of stuff, so they can create good jobs. Construction work that's funded by tax dollars those are very good jobs.
All right, time for a quick answer. Who wants to?
Okay, in quick form, I think you're right to look to construction. It's one of the fastest growing industries in our region. And related to Alex, I want to say I would love to personally partner with you. I'm sure you'll remember my name after we work together, right? The response is somewhat the same to both of those questions. Is the reason that students and young people don't see themselves, whether it's a historically marginalized student or a privileged student, in those arenas, is because we aren't training students to think that way. We're training students to learn advanced analytical skills and scientific skills, but we're not training them to see that opportunity abounds. For example, I'm middle-aged. I just turned 40 yesterday, right? That was hard for my ego. But when I went to school, I actually had faculty members that said, "You're a really smart guy. You're good at math. Why would you want to go into business?"
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we need to change. That's how we get people interested in learning about the construction industry, learning about what they can do, is by engaging them as early as possible, which is why it's so cool to work with elementary school students. And then, again, providing bridges and pathways for them through direct interaction. Just yesterday, I was on Holt Avenue in Pomona talking to street vendors about what they could do to take their side hustle and upskill their abilities by coming to Norco and joining our non-credit free education, so that they could get the training that they need to say, not only can I do this to subsist, but I can do this to create change.
So, As you can see, entrepreneurship is it's an important topic. It's going to need to be a continued part of our conversation. And I'd stress again that synchronization, collaboration, communication, I think is going to be important. And I want to thank Adam, Stacy, Jim, and Rosabelle for providing that really unique input and perspective. So everybody give them a huge round of applause. And Alex, don't let me get out of here without us getting connected on what we're going to do. I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you to come to see me. I was waiting for you right here. So thank you again, and that concludes our panel. Great job.
Can we get another round of applause for the panel? That was incredible. And I know we're running just a little bit behind time, but now my brain is running, and I'm just like, oh, I can't leave without just mentioning that some of what we're hearing here when we're thinking about entrepreneurship is this idea of innovation. And what's kind of different about entrepreneurship is that you're able to create new opportunities for yourself and for others, opportunities that you don't currently see. And I think that that's a particular opportunity in our region. To Alex's point, just to uplift what you're saying for a moment, I've taught a few classes in grad school and now a little bit out of grad school, and I've had a few students, very few, who looked like me, 2 in particular out of about 100. And what I noticed is that you're putting students to fit within a cookie cutter mold that was never designed to look like them in the first place. That we're kind of pushing them into a space that doesn't really look like them. So what I appreciate from this conversation of entrepreneurship and innovation is to create your own space, is to think big about that new space ahead. So kind of leaving that conversation re-energized and reinvigorated about the future and how we think about the workforce. I'm sure you all would agree with me that that was quite the informative discussion. I'm going to give just a little bit of information about the breakout sessions, and we'll take a break and transition to our breakout rooms no later than a minute from now. Panelists will share a little bit about who they are, their perspectives and experiences. We have youth, we have community members, employers, and entrepreneurs. Questions will guide a subsequent conversation for each short session. Note takers will capture the discussion, and there will be sticky notes if you have something you want to make sure is also captured in the conversation. Breakout rooms are located to the right of the check-in table. If you're facing the Marriott Hotel, right in this direction, please look at the dot on your name tag. If it is red, go to room 7, nearest to the lobby. If it is blue, you'll go to room 8, which is the middle room. And if it's green, then you'll go to room 9. Please do not sit in the chairs marked for panelists and note takers. Each breakout is 25 minutes in total. And remember that panelists, not attendees, I'll repeat that, panelists and not attendees will rotate at the end of each session. I'm going to repeat the numbers and the colors one more time. If your color is red, please go to room 7, nearest to the lobby. If it is blue, then you'll go to room 8, which is the middle room. If then it is green, then you will go to room 9. Remember that panelists and not attendees will rotate at the end of each session. Now let's take a very short break, since we're behind time, and transition to our breakout rooms, and I'll see you there. He's a longtime member and past chairman of Riverside County's Workforce Development Board. As a gubernatorial appointee, serving his 3rd straight governor, Jamil has been a member of the California Workforce Development Board since 2004. Where he served as a chairman for 2 years. He's also a board member of the National Association of Workforce Boards in Washington, D.C., where he also served as a chairman also for 2 years. Jamil serves on several boards and commissions related to the former March Air Force Base, now March Air Reserve Base or March Field, a 105-year-old base and the largest Air Force Reserve base in the United States Air Force. His service includes chairman of the March Field Foundation, president of the March Field Air Museum, and chairman of the Greater Riverside Chamber of Commerce Commerce's Military Affairs Council. Got to catch my breath for a second. Additionally, he's a member of the Air Mobility Command Civic Leader Advisory Board and the 452nd Air Mobility Wing's Honorary Wing Commander. In addition to supporting our military, he's also very passionate about base joint use efforts. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Jamil Dada.
I guess my time's up, he said. All that is gibberish, right? I mean, who cares about all that stuff? By the way, this is really special because I see friends, I see family, I see neighbors, I see associates. This is just wonderful to be here. Okay, so we heard some great stuff today, right? The secretary was amazing. I honestly believe this is like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our region to come together to do some amazing stuff. And I know by now, after lunch, it gets a little heavy sitting, listening to people. So, but anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it so far. But there is more information coming, I think, as I believe there's another panel and some breakouts. But I wanted to visit the topic of discussion from earlier this morning. Patrick Ellis, the chair of our Workforce Development Board, reminded us that the Inland Empire's workforce development system is at a critical juncture, basically a fork in the road, and changes upon us, automation, people changing their professional trajectories, change in the way work is done because of COVID, people working from home. I think Patrick said, what, 50, 60% of the job categories that are going to be there in 2030 don't even exist right now. So, and innovation is so quick, right? Every time we see something on TV, a commercial, and we go, how did they think of, who thought of that? That's amazing. What are they going to invent next? And a month later, there's all this new stuff. So humans are amazing, and that's going to continue to happen. So all the different funding opportunities that are coming our way also bring with them change. And that's essentially what the secretary was talking about, was a great opportunity. And I can tell you, I work closely with her on the California Workforce Development Board, and she talks about the Inland Empire all the time. So if some of you think that everywhere she goes, she says, this is my favorite area, she doesn't say that. She really does like the Inland Empire. And she's making sure that a lot of the governor's team pay more attention to the inland region. Like she said, she chooses the underdog, and we have been the underdog because we're always passed over by the coastal counties. So we have a great voice in Sacramento, and everybody remembers the three things she talked about: climate, resilience, equity and diversity, and then economic development. So those are the things we need to focus on. So we have a choice on how we respond to the changes that are upon us. We can view the future as either one of boundless opportunity or one marked by fear and scarcity. So what are we going to do? Envisioning a future of boundless opportunity requires us to come together. That's what she talked about. To focus on shared goals, values, and interests, and a willingness to consider alternatives and meet on common ground. Because I know at least half of you by first name, I know that all of you care about our region, you care about our people, and you work tirelessly and selflessly to make a difference in the lives of our 4.5 million citizens in the Inland Empire. So from my perspective as a longtime member of not just the California Workforce Development Board, but also the National Association of Workforce Boards, and of course our County Workforce Board, I can tell you that the expectation is for the Inland Empire to present a unified front. So to do that, each and every one of us in the workforce system and the connections we make must be willing to forego narrow interests in favor of moving together as one region. The Workforce Development Board, the Riverside County Workforce Development Board, has full faith in the talented and well-intentioned people in the workforce system. Of course, which includes all of you in the room. We also have great hope that we will come together to actualize the tremendous potential this region has. I really have always felt, I've lived in the Inland Empire for 36 years, and ever since I moved here from West LA, I've always felt that this region is like a laboratory because we have a unique mix of people and cultures and communities, and unlike most of the country, and I think 50, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, the rest of the country will become what we are today. So let's lead by example. And thank you for listening to me and putting up with me for however many years all of you have, and please enjoy the rest of the day, and God bless all of you, and God bless America. Thank you.
I haven't done anything yet, so it'll be amazing. I was working on this last night and I was thinking, when do you ever go to a full day meeting where you're like, that was an incredible PowerPoint today? So I'm in the unenviable position of sharing some information with you via PowerPoint. I hope to keep it brief. I hope to keep it relevant to the comments that you've heard today about the Inland Empire Technical Trade Center. And I hope to share some new information with you about a report that was recently completed around technology and how we can really start to look at technology as a way to build skills for all of our residents and help them to move into good paying jobs and great workforce pipelines. The lights up here are super bright. Woo! Okay. So I'm Deborah Mustaine. I'm the lady who's been running around. Thank you. I just want to say this has been an incredible team here, and I wanted just to thank our servers really quickly for a great job at lunch. I just learned that there are peanut butter and jelly churros, which I did not realize was a thing, but I am definitely going to find out more about those after this. So let's get started. The Inland Empire Technical Trade Center is a response to the urgent need for good jobs for the region's residents, diversification of the regional economy, and for a locally available, educated, and skilled workforce for the region's current and future employers. A unique aspect of this new training center will be a focus on earning while learning by providing students with relevant paid work experience via apprenticeships and other paid work-based learning experiences. Now, you hear me say paid because that is an equity issue. The students who can afford to go to school without having a job are fewer and farther between. We need to make sure that work-based learning for our students is paid so that they have an opportunity to not have to work another job, attend an internship, and then try to go to school and balance all of that. So paid work-based learning is key. Yeah, it worked. As you likely know, the Inland Empire of today, with over 4.6 million residents, is expected to grow to 7 million residents within the next 30 years. So 7 million, I'm not great at math, but that's 2.4 million additional residents. So imagine a future with the 91, 215, 60, 10, and 15 freeways accommodating 2.4 million additional residents. And without the good paying jobs that we've been talking about all day today, they're forced to jump on those freeways to Orange, LA, or San Diego counties. Not something that I think most of us want to see. But it's more than having good jobs here. We must engage our youth and community members to change the Inland Empire's past, which has been characterized by historically low degree attainment, unskilled and low-skilled workers, and corresponding low-wage jobs. The California Dream Index underscores the current challenges faced by the area known as Inland California, stretching from Imperial Valley to the south, Central Valley to the north, and beyond through Yosemite and other rural and recreational sites that we often visit. As you can see from this slide, the Inland Empire region most closely aligns with the Central Valley in terms of educational attainment. It also aligns with the Central Valley when it comes to prosperity, highlighting the need for meaningful intervention to move more residents towards self-sufficiency and prosperity. The Inland Empire Technical Trade Center will create and provide equitable access and opportunities across the region, recognizing the interdependence of the two counties where people often live in one county while working in another. Our region's current growth, coupled with barriers making training unavailable or difficult to access for many of the region's residents, result in an ever-expanding gap between employer needs and availability of a locally educated and trained workforce to fill good jobs. The Jurupa Valley, as one of 7 cities in the Riverside Community College District service area, has pockets of high poverty, low educational attainment, and significant barriers requiring an intensive local intervention to change the trajectory of the region's residents, many of whom experience generational poverty and few experiences with or interest in traditional post-secondary education. This center is really designed to get at the heart of folks who have not been in the traditional education system, who have dreams and hopes and want to provide for their families, want to provide a good home and all of the things that we consider to be the dream. Those folks are not accessing education the way we want them to, and so this center is really designed to be for them, to bring in those folks who have been marginalized and who can benefit from some training to move them into that first step of what we hope is a long and prosperous career. As this data shows, the Jurupa Valley can benefit from an education and training center that can move residents into self-sufficiency jobs and future careers that will provide them with the ability to break cycles of multi-generational poverty and low educational attainment. The center will be available for any of the region's residents who are looking for an opportunity for a brighter future, and will structure its services in partnership with the students and communities that it serves. Again, we heard that this morning. Alex says it quite often, nothing about me without me. And I think that's super important here, that we build these places of learning with the communities that we purport to serve, rather than building them with the, if we build it, they will come mentality. This has to be different so that we're truly helping people to move on that trajectory. To accomplish our commitment to addressing poverty in the region, it will take a proverbial village of dedicated partners to create a space for deep collaborative work. And you heard that several times today, that it's going to take all of us to really do this. And think about, with 2.4 million more residents, it's going to be even more critical that we're all working together. The IETTC is anchored in strong and durable partnerships, ensuring that it will engage all sectors of our community to solve our most pressing challenges in the Jurupa Valley and beyond. These include public partnerships, such as the Labor Partners, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Building Trades Council, Southwest Carpenters, and the Inland Empire Labor Council, the City of Jurupa Valley, and Riverside County, among others. In fact, almost 230 businesses and organizations from Chino to San Bernardino, San Jacinto, and as far as Coachella Valley responded to the invite to be here today to talk about the importance of building our future workforce, a fact that demonstrates a shared commitment to a more just and prosperous region. While we recognize the importance of addressing poverty, we must first recognize the importance of ensuring equity, access, and inclusion, and you've heard that over and over today, for the region's residents to this new center. Partners and partner representation will include all voices, as shared, to ensure that this center is a part of the community it intends to serve, lifting community and worker voices in providing good and quality jobs as a result of specialized and supported technical training. I'd like to give a special shout out and thank you to our partners with the Youth Action Partnership and Inland Empire Multicultural Collaborative, represented here today by Alex and Tremaine, as well as our students, youth, and community partners who are able to make it here today. We've got people here who've taken time off work We had someone that was trying to come with a baby today. She's a single parent student, and she wanted to be here today to talk about her experience. And she just wasn't able to leave her baby, and she didn't have reliable childcare. If that isn't a call to action, I'm not quite sure what is. To date, we've identified an advisory and operational structure that will provide direction and support to the development of IETTC. But we need more partners who are willing to roll up their sleeves and help us to solve this most important challenge. We continue to seek like-minded leaders who are committed to this effort and who can bring their best thinking to the table. Our legislative leaders, anchored by champions like Congressmember Takano and Assemblymember Cervantes, have secured almost $35 million in funding for IETTC. That deserves a clap. It's pretty amazing. Many of the employers, labor leaders, government agencies, community organizations, and other educational entities here today are part of this ambitious regional plan. Next steps for IETTC will include the continued development of awareness and commitment to this important regional technical trade center, convening of advisory councils and work teams, development of labor market data, and identification of faculty champions to help begin the process of developing industry standard programs that will help residents to gain local employment in good and quality jobs. And I heard today that I need to rethink that labor market data. What data are we looking at, and how are we doing that in an equitable way? So that's one of my takeaways for today. I think I'm behind. So in August 2022, the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers, or NCATC, conducted a 3-day site tour of our region, including meeting with 15 focus and partner groups to inform the development of IETTC. The NCATC provides RCCD with access to a network of advanced technology centers across the nation, including opportunities to learn about innovative technologies and promising practices in partnership with major national employers. As a result of the site visit, a report from NCATC was recently completed. Findings from the 90-page plus report included the following recommendations. First, to proceed. Proceed as quickly and as efficiently as you can. NCATC validated the need for a technical training center in the Jurupa Valley based on interviews, data, and several site visits across the region. Second, NCATC recognized the importance of creating pipelines to connect students from K-12 through post-secondary with opportunities for dual enrollment and specialized articulation agreements. The report also recommends a continued focus on employer needs, recognizing the importance of creating a workforce that can be locally employed in good jobs and careers. Additional recommendations included developing an awareness campaign that actively recruits and works with youth and community members, workers, community organizations, and impacted populations to ensure that the center meets the needs of the communities and individuals it plans to serve. Thank you all for your time and attention. We hope that you are inspired to join us in creating a world-class technical training center for the Inland Empire.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mustaine. A copy will be posted to the RCC website soon. Before we take a short break and head to the third breakout session, I'd like to discuss an opportunity to vote on the IETTC logo. You can see the options here. After breakout session number 4, the roll-alike session, please return to the volume where you grabbed your buffet lunch, where we are here now. The cookie you take is the vote you make for the new Inland Empire Technical Trade Center logo. Choose your favorite of the 2 logos and we'll count your vote. These are really cool logos, by the way. Now it's time for a short break. Please return to the same rooms that you were in before lunch by 12:55 for breakout session 3.
Good afternoon. We're going to have our final panel. Woo! We have the inevitable position of being after lunch and at the very end of this program, but it's going to be exciting, it's going to be new, and it's going to be something that you really want to hear and know about. Because we're talking about the future here. So our panel is, I don't have the, let me see if I have the title. Oh, I'm sorry, here it is. So our panel is Opportunities for the IE in Addressing Climate Impacts and Climate Change. So we're going to have some time for question and answers towards the end. So I hope you're going to be thinking about your questions, and hopefully we can all answer them. And we have a really diverse panel here, so it's going to be interesting thinking about how these areas come across, because we have representation from the California Air Resources Board, CARB, Mark Fuentes. And we have Joyce Jung from the City of Riverside and the Northside Agricultural Innovation Center. Thanks. And we have Joyce to thank for the beautiful centerpieces. Others.
I'm just connected. Whoops.
Oh, there you go. She's connected, but she's given the kudos to others. And then we have Elizabeth, I should have asked her. Yeah, Scarzat, who's with the Chino Basin Valley Water District. So we have water represented up here. And then finally, we have Aaron Dyer, who's with Southern California Edison. So we have all of the major components that deal with your life right here at this front table. So we're going to get ready. We have the big question is, which our panelists are going to answer, and if you want to give a bit of introduction of who you are and what your agency is to begin with, but then to think about while climate change and climate impacts create a number of challenges, what opportunities does it create in workforce development to better prepare the IE for its impacts? So that's our big question for you today. And I guess we'll start with you, Mark, if you want to be the first one to kind of talk about who you are.
Sure. I'm Mark Fuentes. I'm the chief of the Mobile Source Laboratory Division at the California Air Resources Board. Our Southern California headquarters just relocated not far from here on Iowa and University here in Riverside. And I won't try to answer that question right now other than to say that I'm trying to bridge the gap here between this question about the future jobs related to climate and air quality and the jobs I have right now available. So I've got, in my department alone, about 37 vacancies that straddle anything from admin to techs to truck drivers on up to engineers and chemists. So that's my focus here, is trying to fill those, but we also want to establish our contacts for the longer term and being able to tap into various pools of talent as we move forward.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Joyce Jong. I'm with the City of Riverside, but I wear another hat, and that is that I'm also a third-generation farmer, so agriculture is in my blood. And at the City of Riverside, I work on food systems and sustainability initiatives.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Scarzat. I am the general manager of the Chino Basin Water Conservation District. We are one of 15 water conservation districts statewide in California, and our job is to take water from the environment and store it for later use, in our case in the Chino Basin Aquifer, which is one of the largest aquifers in Southern California.
And good afternoon. My name is Aaron Dyer. I am in Southern California Edison's electrification group. Our primary focus is, developing customer-side programs to make it easier, cheaper, and more convenient for, all of the customers in our territory to convert to electric vehicles, building electrification, and, the things that are associated with that. I think similar to what Mark was saying, we're, just for background in Edison, we're one of the largest investor-owned utilities in the country. We employ about 13,000 to 14,000 people over a 50,000 square mile service territory in Southern California, all the way up to Mammoth. And just if you follow what's going on in climate, electrification is pretty central to a lot of the things that we're doing here, and just thinking about the work that needs to go on with the grid and getting these things converted. There's a lot of opportunity at a company like this, or for all kinds of work in terms of the line workers, the electricians, the contractors, to customer service representatives, to planners, to program designers and project managers, and it's really, as much as you can imagine in a company of that size. So we're right in the middle of it and looking to see how we can help, make more of this happen at a faster pace.
Great, thank you. So Erin, so maybe we'll just continue on that thought a little bit, and thinking about how do we prepare our workforce, or what is Edison really looking for, and what can the educational, institutions that are in the room really help work with our major, utilities, our major groups out there?
Well, I mean, the core of our business really is, maintaining a safe and reliable grid. And to that end, I think there's an IEBW, or by BEW, I'm sorry, I always get your acronym mixed up here in the room. We work pretty heavily with those groups. So fundamental electrical skills, those are really needed for that side of the job. That's not going away. I think, there's a lot of discussion about how maybe we need special training and special skills to help, expand what we're doing going forward. But the reality is, all new technologies notwithstanding, the core of what Southern California Edison does really hasn't changed in a long time in terms of the type of electrical skills that are needed to do that. So continuing to have that robust nature, but beyond that, kind of what I was mentioning was, at least from our perspective, we've got a very large workforce, but it's varied in terms of, age and, retirement schedules and those sorts of things. There's a lot of things associated to make that work in the background. Like I said, planners. Even just as an example, the group that I work in, we have a lot of marketing background people, creative engineering types, like really focused on designing customer programs. So how do you build an incentive program that gets to people to do these things, or how do you design a rate case so that you get people to use electricity at the right time of day to encourage the right types of resources or to maintain grid reliability. So there's a lot of, I think, one thing I always kind of think about with this is creative thinking, solving solving problems simply in a way, but being able to kind of think about these things, like I said, and it's hard to put my finger on it, but I think one of the things that I see missing a lot is when I interview people to join our team, is just being able to kind of make those connections across multiple types of disciplines and trains of thought, which I think the point of this conversation we're going to go into is that all this being interrelated, you kind of have to start thinking about things more, not just in the silo that you operate in. And that's something that I think was going to be increasingly needed as we go forward.
That's great. And Elizabeth, what about in the water? What can you share with us on?
Sure. All right. So in water in general, it's such a diverse field. So you have a lot of different types of jobs that someone can do that can choose to go into water. So everything from the administrative types of jobs to pipe fitters, to meter readers, to people who are working with customers, irate customers, people who work with communications, because every time there is a drought, we do have to convince people to use less water. And one of the things that's great about the water industry in general is these are very good jobs. They pay well, they have pensions, the healthcare is outstanding. There's any number of certifications that young people can be pointed toward, and that would set them up for success in the field. But you can even do wonderful jobs like the office assistant and still get a very good paycheck with a pension and an excellent health care plan. And we definitely also need those people. So I would also say, just at the underlying level, beyond all the technical skills that you need, I think that the soft skills sometimes, especially sitting through interviews or reading terrible cover letters, are so lacking. And they're so important to get right. Having someone come, to the interview, look you in the eye, give you a good handshake, be dressed appropriately, show up for work on time, and communicate effectively with their colleagues does not need to be taught in an engineering class. It really needs to be taught, in kindergarten, but also, just hammered in high school.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. I'd like to actually step back a little bit and maybe help paint what the landscape looks like in agriculture, in particular for our region. And then my response to what the workforce development needs are will make much more sense. Agriculture, I'm a rarity, third generation farmer. I'm just curious, raise of hand, any of you have touched agriculture directly right now? All right, one, I see 4 hands up. Total, 5, okay, fantastic. So I would say that to paint that landscape of what agriculture is looking like right now, Riverside County and San Bernardino County, the IE region, in terms of what's called farm gate value. This is what farmers produce across both Riverside and San Bernardino County. It is a $1.9 billion industry. Agriculture is a base industry, which means that it downstream, it supplies logistics, packaging, distribution, manufacturing, et cetera, restaurants, retail, before you and I actually got it here today at lunchtime and in the form of cookie voting as well, right? And what's really fascinating about agriculture, what folks don't realize, is that that 1.9 billion farm gate, this is what farmers produce across the two counties, generate another on top of that, $3.4 billion in economic activity across our region. That is $5.3 billion in economic activity. So that's pretty significant, but we really don't think about the agricultural workforce, right, in that scale, because it's out of sight, out of mind. Most folks are 4 or 5 generations removed from ag. And then so what, regarding agriculture, then I talk about that. Another challenge is that, or there are 3 concurrent challenges to agriculture. One of them is aging workforce. The average age of the farmer, not just here in our state, but across the nation, is in their 60s. That average age has been increasing the past several decades. That means that younger generation is not coming in. And it's estimated 1/3 of them are 65 years and older, meaning they're in their 60s and 70s and 80s, right? And they will retire in the next 10 to 20 years. And a recent study that has been conducted by the University of California Cooperative Extension, a recent survey of about 250 area regional farmers, they've identified workforce is the most critical issue. The second most critical issue facing agriculture is climate impacts, climate change. Our region will get hotter. Heat impacts productivity. So if you have read in the news, heat stresses, not only in this country, but in Europe, has reduced agricultural output in terms of as much as 20-25%, right? And then the third threat that is facing our region in an incredible way for agriculture is that, according to a recent study that came out in June this year by the American Farmland Trust, they've projected, based on development trends across the country, but also looking at our region, by the year 2040, as much as 218,000 acres, I'll repeat that, 218,000 acres of ag land will be converted, could be converted to development. As we have talked about today, this region will grow to 7 billion, sorry, not billion, million. Yikes. Oh my goodness. 2 more million people for this region. That's that many more mouths to feed and such incredible competing land uses for development. And in light of climate, and in light of an aging workforce, because we know climate impact, one, we're reducing available space for agriculture to grow on. Our aging ag workforce, we have drought challenges. We also are trying to, and then you're going to talk about emissions, and we also have energy emissions and mitigation challenges. And then from an energy perspective, how do you bring all that together? And so there are efforts underway in this region to build a regional agriculture innovation center to do workforce development, exactly that. And how do we bring together food production, water, and renewable energy in that same space, and being innovative and training that future generation workforce that is productive, and also the adaptation of technology so that we can meet the growing needs of being resilient in terms of our food system, and we will have other disruptions that will come down the pipeline, like the pandemic. Hopefully not. Well, we still need to get through this one, right? But there will be disruptions in how do we manage our food security in essence. And I'll stop there for now.
No, that's great. Thank you so much. But you kind of stole one of my questions for later, but we'll go there. Hey, Mark, so CARB.
Right. So our 3 major charges of air quality and climate and community engagement all demand, that in terms of workforce development, jobs at every level. As I mentioned earlier, from a technician standpoint, all the way up to engineering and sciences, STEM type backgrounds. But it really is so multifaceted that we need all those all those folks. And in some instances, we can't, at this point, say exactly what it is that we're going to need, 5, 10 years out from now. But currently, it is those technicians, technical, primarily engineering and science kind of backgrounds that we're looking for. I will also iterate that just much like my colleague over here, the jobs that we do have are well-paying jobs. They do have great benefits, healthcare among them, and it's a very attractive place to work. You've got, as we reflect out into the communities that we serve as well, we're also starting to look internally at our DEI efforts and what more we can do there to, make our workplace something that people want to come to and want to work in, setting aside the goals that we have for the agency. It's just a great place to work. So.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place. So the next question that they have here, but I'm going to modify it a little bit, is thinking about how this region can really help the state and federal level or the climate goals that are being set by the state and the federal government. But I also want to maybe turn it a little bit on its head and think about how do we bring more federal and state dollars to this region. I mean, one, the new CARB Center, if you haven't seen it, it's fabulous and you should go see it because it's an amazing investment for our region. But how do we bring more funds here, and how do we really think about the IE's role? Because if we are the future, as we heard from our keynote speaker at lunch, if this is what the future nation looks like, how do we have this symbiotic relationship with our federal and state governments? Mark, you want to start us off? The easy one.
I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, Kim. Honestly, I mean, a lot of the money that is in our budget, our annual budget, is federal money. There's probably upwards of $40 million at least of federal money in CARB's budget, not counting, what may be coming down the line in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act and all the climate change provisions and money that's in there. So I only see more of that coming our way. I think our speaker and the secretary earlier were saying, trying to, what efforts can be taken to kind of galvanize efforts in the region so that we're not competing against each other and kind of working together as a united front. I personally don't have the answers to those kinds of questions, but it seems like there's only more money that's going to come, certainly related to climate.
Okay, thank you. Joyce, any thoughts?
Yes, actually several. So your first question, how can the region help meet state and federal climate goals? Part of that, I think, the base of that is really partnerships with our various sectors in this region. And by that, I mean our education institutions, private sector, our nonprofits, coming together to find innovative solutions, right? To find innovative solutions to address how agriculture, which is a working landscape, because working landscapes have natural abilities to sequester carbon, right? What gets polluted, working landscapes can do that. And farmers are stewards of land and other resources. And if we can build a robust and more resilient food system, ag-based solution, we can reduce the vehicle miles traveled, for example, so that we're not importing so much from outside of the region, right? And then the other thing too is, again, meeting the renewable energy goals. Let's integrate renewable energy into our farming operations. That's the first question. The second one, how do we bring more state and federal dollars to the region? Again, innovation, right? So the collective in this region working on the ag workforce and building the center out to model for others, we are seeing more and more, and we'll continue to see more federal dollars in particular for grant funds. The federal government is very, very interested in climate smart commodities. So food security is national security, right? And so, so just 2 weeks ago, USDA announced they put out a $1 billion, and I've never seen a grant pot of money, but $1 billion that they wanted to fund pilot projects across the United States for climate smart commodities. And as part of helping farmers adopt climate smart production practices, but doing the market development as well, right? So you and I as consumers can also support climate smart commodities. And instead of awarding $1 billion, they selected 70 large-scale projects and upped that dollar investment to $2.8 billion. This is a big deal, folks, climate impacts, because agriculture is at the forefront. And so we as a region and many partners are working together on different projects so that we can bring those dollars and demonstrate and model for others across the state how innovation can take place, but again, all through partnerships. Again, your private, your public, and nonprofit collectively. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I would honestly simply reiterate what Joyce is saying is it's really, we need to band together and lobby for it. Band together and put up our own money as match and apply for it. I mean, I was born and raised in the Inland Empire, but I did work in the city of Los Angeles for about 8 years. And you know, one of the reasons it's so good at getting money from the state and the feds is because they're all partnering together, and then they go after big money. That's how they do it. So instead of seeing each other as competitors, we need to see each other as partners so that it's not a million little voices, but big, loud voices working together. And you know, the feds and the state, they love partnerships. They love the story of partnerships. They love multiple benefit stories. And that's what brings money to any given location.
Great, thank you.
No, I think that's absolutely right. What's that phrase? All sand goes to the beach sort of thing. Where it'll all go to the place once you figure out how to do it. And yeah, I mean, you know, from the electricity side, from clean transportation, I mean, thinking about this particular region, you know, the ports of LA, the port of Long Beach get a lot of attention just in terms of deservedly, given the amount of, you know, trucks in and out of there. But I mean, where do all those trucks end up going? They come out here. And there is just, I mean, you know, Air Resources Board is generously putting a lot of money into their state programs for incentivizing, you know, the trucks, and, you know, the utilities are working to do this infrastructure. But then, I mean, the honest truth is right now we probably have the most like shovel-ready, like aggressive, like federal government that we're going to have in a long time. They're just really looking to fund projects that are ready to go. We were really excited about this at the utility. We said, oh, cool, there's so many things that we want to do. How do we kind of build this into our thinking and our modeling? Unfortunately, we're not necessarily one of the parties that can directly apply for a lot of the funds in like the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, the IIJA, but many other organizations are, and what they're looking for are like, you know, consortiums and collaborative efforts among people in regions. Like, why not go after projects as, hey, like we're going to like completely transform a particular sector of our economy that, you know, works across multiple counties, you know, although that's multiple counties is hard to do with San Bernardino because it's so big. It basically is multiple counties on its own, but you know, multiple cities, multiple municipalities, you know, multiple regions, multiple corporations, like parts that feed an ecosystem. And I know, you know, Deb, you and I have talked about this in terms of the logistics industry before, but I mean, things like that are really, there's a lot of money out there for this stuff, but it requires really solid project proposals to go forward, and then working, you know, cross-sectorally, whether that's with the Air Resources Board, whether that's with your local utility, whether that's with your, you know, local cities that are going to have to work with the, you know, kind of maybe road planning or other kind of construction projects. But I mean, having those things sort of buttoned up and like, you know, with a bow on them ready to go, like the money's literally laying around, and that's kind of the thing, is getting ahead of it and working with the people that are at key points in the processes to like help you like answer maybe the technical questions that you don't know. But to, you know, to your point, that's what they've done really well. Like that, you know, in groups in Los Angeles and other places, they've gotten those entities together. And there's no reason that I've only ever lived in the Inland Empire since I've lived in California, and there's really no reason that we can't do that either. I don't see why we can't.
So that kind of brings me to my last question, and then we'll open it up. And Joyce, you sort of answered this already for us, but and I come from Cal State San Bernardino. I didn't introduce myself, but I work at Cal State San Bernardino. We work a lot in silos, you know. Faculty, PhDs, we love our silos because we're all experts in right, Nicole, right? We're all experts in our one field, and we don't want to move outside those boundaries of that field. So I know all about silos, but how do we get out of our silos, right? Because as you just said, this is a huge region. I mean, we're bigger than how many states on the eastern seaboard? We're huge. And we're kind of glumped together, and we have high desert, low desert, we have, you know, sort of the center area, we have something that kind of feels like a little LA, and then we have other stuff over here. And we have the Coachella Valley, so it's just, we're a very large region. I mean, we touch upon the Salton Sea, which is a whole nother ecosystem. How do we really bring together all of our if we look at ourselves as geographical regions or watersheds, or, I mean, we're all under kind of the same air district, but, you know, what is our unifying stance, and how do we move outside of our silos so that we can come together? And it's no easy thing, trust me. And come visit any academic institution, and we'll talk about silos. But how do we move forward? And any ideas, any thoughts? Aaron?
I mean, I'll think that, you know, if you really just start thinking along the lines of what does, like, maybe the best solution look like, I think, right? And, like, I think we often think about what does the best solution look like in terms of what I can influence or what my organization can influence, but throw that aside. Like, if you could do any of the things, like, what would you do? And maybe that involves things that are outside of your area of discipline or outside of your, you know, the type of work that you typically do. Okay, great. Who does that other part that you don't do? And, like, start finding those big, you know, those big kind of creative solutions and those groups together that can do that. I mean, on a real micro level, for example, like, just as anecdotally, I was talking to a brewery owner one time, and they were looking at doing a kind of a cool thing with their solar project, right? They wanted to put rooftop solar on their facility, and they realized that they use a lot of hot water, like, to clean things like that. So, well, hey, I can run piping onto the solar panels underneath to cool the panels down. That makes them work better. And then that hot water that I take off, that I actually can use for my heating water. So I don't have to, you know, pay to heat the water up and it reduces my water bill. It's like, okay, cool. But, like, if you were just an electrician or just a plumber, you wouldn't think of that solution, right? Or I could say, what would be the best thing for that building? Like, it's kind of integrating those together. And so I think if we think about solutions for our region, it's what would be the ideal solution, and then find the partners that fill in the gaps that you don't have, and then we all start working together to get better ones, rather than just focusing on the one competency that you're capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the best conversation to always start with is, what are my goals and what are your goals, and how do they overlap? What do I need and what do you need, and is there a way to get both? And what am I willing to put up to the table, and what are you willing to put up to the table? And can we make something out of that? And it's a really, it can be interesting because it is not a conversation that just follows A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? It is a conversation that is iterative, and you might be sitting there for a long time before you figure it out, and you just have to be willing to hang in that space for a while, and until you can find where things overlap.
All right.
I'm going to say the same thing they did, but in a different way. I think the challenges that we're faced, and in particular climate for our region, these are really, really large-scale challenges. And on that kind of a scale, you're looking at systems, right? Mm-hmm. And in a systems approach, it takes multiple sectors to come together. And, you know, what Jackie's doing with the SURF and IEGO is that approach, looking at, you know, from a systems perspective, right? And then I think, too, because we've got so many folks around, and this is where I'm going to rephrase what you guys did, is it's really, I think, another way to look at it is, what are our shared values at the core, the base? What are those shared values? And because I think when we are able to connect at those shared values and realize, like, wow, right? And then in each of our own spaces, if we say this is what we want to accomplish overall as that shared value by this timeline, then get the resources necessary for each of the folks in their silos, but to operate and to mobilize, right, to get to meeting the shared values.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm just going to repeat what you guys said as well in terms of partnerships, but I think also it's going to require, and we're starting to go down this road of more and more community engagement to listen to what folks have to say about the things that we're doing. We have an idea of, you know, we know what our goals are. We think we have ways and roadmaps, scoping plans and SIPs to try to get us to those goals. But it's not always practical, the things sometimes we're proposing. And we often don't hear how impractical it is until you hear a crowd of people in front of you telling you how off base or tone deaf or, you know, out in left field that you really are. So I think I know a major goal of ours is to do more of that community engagement, and to the effect of, I think we just heard, we are creating a new office within CARB to both look internally and externally at our DEI work and our community engagement, and to try to really ground truth what it is that we're trying to do.
Great.
Actually, add some.
Sorry?
Could I actually add
Please.
something? Yeah. So, you know, another thing is really, it's important not to be afraid to talk to your competitors. So I found out a while back that one of the local water districts was applying for the exact same grant that we were applying for in the exact same space, to do a similar project in the exact same space. So instead of, you know, applying for 2 grants, what we decided to do was go ahead and combine them and apply for a bigger grant. And, you know, we eventually got a grant to cover both of our projects. So, you know, if we had worked against each other, we would not have brought that money to our community. And now, you know, instead of just getting a spillway or just getting an inlet, now our community is getting both of those things to put more water in the ground.
That's great.
Yeah. And then, you know, another thing that that you really can't be afraid to do is go ask your elected officials for help. So even if you run into them at, say, you know, a barbecue that they hold once a year, true story, it's important to go up and tell them what you have going on that might need funding. And, you know, then you might find yourself the recipient of a $300,000 federal grant, also true story. So, you know, you just got to be bold and talk to people and make it happen.
Great. We have some time for, anybody have a question? Yes, please. Yeah, that'd be great.
One of the conversations that we have around our children's future, even though they're in San Francisco right now, but you know, we hope one day they'll come back, is the future. You know, will there be a point, for example, in them buying homes when we might run out of water? And you also mentioned the idea of shared values at our base. I think one shared value we can all agree upon is that we need to eat. And so, looking at the innovation and the types of things that we've spoken about today, I've followed with interest for years the innovations made in the country, in the nation of Israel, around farming in the desert, around high yield, you know, food and the technologies. And I think I heard that drip irrigation originated there 1 million years ago, whatever it is. Are those the types of projects that you are on your radar, rather than trying to reinvent something, and they're already doing it so well? Yes, it's a smaller country, it's smaller than the IE, right? But still, I think they're successfully feeding 9 million people. So that's my question. Is that something that you might think of importing, that technology, because they seem to have it figured out already? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And the answer at the final answer is yes. The technology exists. The technology exists out there. You look at Israel, you look at Denmark and other places, you know, that have integrated essentially indoor agriculture. And I really think that, and what we are looking to model at the Northside Agriculture Innovation Center is to bring solar greenhouses, about 40,000 square feet minimum. And we're working with UC Riverside. We have, very fortunate in our region, a land grant university research in agriculture. And so the IP that comes out of there, right? And so the technology exists out there. It's just that we are maybe slower adopters, but climate is going to force us to do that. And when we are able to move indoors, and if you look at the land use challenges, the drought and the heat, controlled environment agriculture provides a lot of solutions, and they're high-tech jobs. They're jobs that provide good living wages, feed your family. Farming is a business. We need to look at farming as a business, right? And controlled agriculture addresses energy needs. You can reduce water use as much as 80 to 95%. So looking at water resources. The other thing too is with indoor agriculture, with infrastructure, equipment inside, you go vertical instead of out, right? And because of the heat challenges, and you can control the temperature in there, you can manage and maintain year-round growing rather than be exposed to extreme heat, which is coming to this region.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. What are the biggest challenges? You said it's going to take, it's going to be slow and adopt. What do you see as your biggest challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is that we, as Southern California has urbanized, agriculture in essence is really at a site, at a mine in an urban environment. And I think it's important that we have food production near urban centers. And creating, and I think one of our earlier panelists really talked about infrastructure, right? And so investments, capital investments, create infrastructure, facilities, by that I mean facilities, right? And then once you have the facilities in place to do the programming, and then you have your education partners and your businesses and your ag tech startups, et cetera, that occupy that space, then you start to grow an ecosystem, right? And then the other thing that's really important too is investing, right? Investing, using local money to invest in these local infrastructure so that dollar stays here. So there's a lot of economic development that can occur in that space.
And if I may on that, just thinking about in the spirit of breaking down silos, I don't know if you are yet, working with, people maybe at Southern California Edison or the others about these projects, but we've actually been thinking internally about, what would be the implications of indoor agriculture in a space like the Inland Empire.
We need to talk.
Yes, so I would say let's break down one of the silos and talk to this, because I think, that's going to have an implication for what we do in sort of serving load in the territory, and we have no idea what that looks like. What does that look like in terms of the systems that we need? Well, so yeah, we would love to have that conversation.
Yeah, so City of Riverside has its own public utility, Riverside Public Utility. So we are working on the solar greenhouse project with the utilities to develop a model that can then be replicated. So a lot of innovation happening in this space, in this region, in ag.
And we have time for one more quick question.
Do we? Okay.
Hi, I'm really glad that Joyce brought up the point of how much land, agricultural land, we are going to lose to development over the next few decades. That's such a key point in our region because, we keep selling off millions of square feet for warehouses, saying that we need those warehouses to create more jobs. And that's partly because we see that land as nothing but dirt that's a commodity that has value only for what it can be sold to developers, instead of seeing it as land that helps keep our climate cooler, land that absorbs carbon, land that sustains biodiversity in our region, which has an impact on human health at the microbial level. There's so much value that supposedly empty land has. It's never really empty. And you all on this panel have shown how there are a lot of jobs that we can cultivate in our region around being stewards of our natural resources. But we keep creating these warehouse jobs that wear people down quickly, have a high turnover rate, don't pay family-sustaining wages. How can we shift our orientation so that we're really thinking about intergenerational enrichment and resilience in this region in a way that's focused on both people and climate? Thank you.
That's an excellent question.
That's a big question for us to end our panel with. Yeah.
I mean, not from just from my personal perspective, and not speaking for any of the cities here, but I think one of the things that Joyce, that you're talking about in terms of bringing back some of these industries in different ways, or you think about a number of the just off the top of my head, thinking back in 2019, there was 100,000 plus, employees in sort of the EV space that were in mostly LA and Orange County, but why aren't they here? So I don't know what role there's got to be for encouraging the development of businesses here that aren't just warehouses, right? But I think there's something to be said for once you sort of create a nexus of some type of other industry that people can latch onto, that maybe that's becomes sort of a hub that things build upon, that provide these sort of multi-generational, like job stability, wealth generation, things that are not of this mold. Right now, I mean, just as an Inland Empire resident, seeing sort of the prevalence of these popping up, I think, oh, it's the easy way to kind of get stuff going quickly. It also builds off the fact that we import so much stuff through the Port of LA, and there's sort of these transloading facilities that do this, and they put them out here, for better or for worse, for what that does to us. But I think finding some other types of, whether that's innovative farming, whether that's other innovative solutions that we can kind of bring to this area, starts making that land or those, spaces, more valuable for something else. And like, that's maybe the thing that we have to think about is what do we bring into the space that is more value than just sort of an intermediary storage facility. I think, and that's a good question for a lot of people and encouraging. I know, John, you and I are having that conversation about, bringing in like, entrepreneurship and, other types of innovative, businesses to the region, but that's a long and hard path that needs to happen.
All right, I want to thank our panel because we're out of time, and thank you for our last question for us to think about that as we all leave and go on to our own silos. And hopefully we'll break those down. So Deb, you want to come up and, do we have what? Oh, Michael's coming up. Well, Michael, come on up. And thanks to all our panel members for an interesting, short conversation. We need more time so we can delve into these better. Thank you. I didn't introduce myself. Yeah, but don't introduce me because somebody will go back to my dean and tell them.
She didn't want the long introduction. Well, thank you again, and thanks again to our panelists for such a great conversation. You can join me in giving them another round of applause. I think many of us probably have very key takeaways. Mine is collaboration is key. And I think especially so in an area such as environment that is so non-excludable, so shared, where the impacts are kind of widespread, but the costs can sometimes be concentrated, but also sometimes not and diffuse. Collaboration is one of those things that I heard in the conversation. Somebody said earlier in one of the earlier panels, it takes a village to raise a child. There's also kind of another proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, and breaking down some of those silos. So I want to say before we continue, just thank you to everyone for being here, for participating, for making it this far. Thanks to GIA and the county and others for putting this together. And of course, to RCCD for planning this entire thing for us. A special thank you to Dr. Deborah Mustaine, who is doing such incredible work. And of course, to all the speakers and participants and panelists throughout the day. I would now like to invite Dr. Deborah Mustaine back to the stage to close us out. And just want to say, as she's making her way over here, that she's one of the greatest examples of doing the hard work, of thinking very hard about what we need to do, about collaborating with others, making sure voices are included, putting in the work past the hours that is on your timesheet, and making sure that we are doing this the way that it should be done. So thank you so much, Dr. Mustaine, for putting all this together and for your leadership.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Oh my gosh, makes me a little weepy. I'm just so proud to be part of this region. I came here in 2000, and I was a single mom, and I took my first job at Hemet High because it wasn't in a rap song, so I figured it was probably safe. I didn't know anything about California, and I made my way around many places in Southern California, but the Inland Empire has been my home. And I just want to say that today was super inspiring for me. I hope that it was inspiring for you. We have a lot of work to do, but there are so many good people and so many people that I want to thank. I have a whole laundry list, so I feel like I'm a little bit like at the Academy Awards or whatever, where I'm going to get played off soon. But I'd like to thank my RCCD colleagues, Leslie Vargas, Annette Vargas, DJ Vigil. You may have noticed that a lot of the songs had to do with work. DJ Vigil was very busy creating that playlist for you. Robert Schmidt, Chris Clark, Marisa Yeager, who's not my colleague anymore, but I still love her at CSUSB. Riverside County staff, especially Leslie Traynor, Stephanie Adams, and Cheryl Mahiney for your work. All of our panelists and moderators, Cheryl Anderson, Night Owl Bay, and Growing Hope. Our Growing Hope folks made all of these beautiful arrangements. You can eat them if you'd like to before you leave, if you didn't get enough food today. Alex and Tremaine from IE Multicultural Collective, Youth Action Project, our students, the City of Harupa Valley, Robert Mason, you're a good and constant friend and colleague, and Michael Wiafe, who we are just so proud of you. We know you're going to go far. We hope you remember us when you go. And you come back. We have a bright future ahead of us, and I just, we're not going to let him go, right? Yeah. And I know this was a long day, and there was a lot of conversation, and that was really intentional so that you could start to build those real relationships and start to have those important conversations that we need to have. So just thank you. Be safe. Go out there, love one another, serve one another, and we will get where we need to go in the Inland Empire. Thank you.